Test, 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 test. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Hope you guys are having an excellent night. I'll be getting started in just a minute here. Shout out to Darth Magog and Saria Zabona. Hope you guys are doing well. It's great to see you. Hope you've had a great week. Um, I always love seeing your routine, Saria, of going through, like, turning on the lights, sanitizing your hands, getting in the box, dabbing, and then getting hyped. That's amazing. I really appreciate that. Um, Saria says, on a side note, I feel like the Naruto power scalers are taking turns doing videos at this point because it feels like everyone's just recycling topics. If only Naruto had a sequel series or movies. Yeah, if only there were some other forms of like peripheral entertainment that people could dip into to kind of expand their horizons. I will say, despite my disagreements with Key over here, I have to give him props for actually expanding out into some games that I hadn't heard of, and actually trying to bring in arguments from different sources and whatnot. Talking about like this crossover media over here. Never heard about this before. This is pretty cool. The mobile games and the feats from various things, like credit where credit is due for scouring from a bunch of different sources and trying to put together data from those different sources. Of course, I disagree with the interpretations, to say the least, but I do think we should do that more as a community, encourage each other to get out of our comfort zones and be willing to engage with stuff that is a little bit less talked about. I don't want to make fun of anybody or to be harsh, but I gotta say, if I see one more fucking thumbnail that's like, I was joking about this with with Walkie Talkie the other day, like, just one more thumbnail that's like X versus Y character is not close, or nothing about X, Y, or Z thing, or like this matchup is not fair, right? And it has to have like, let me just try this, like a Naruto vs battle, and let's just see what comes up. Like this is fine, right? Like, this is like Swag's videos from like 8 years ago. I might be disproving myself here, but like, so many videos that I've seen, which of course are not coming up now, are basically just like the same. What the fuck? Okay, sorry, get a little distracted. Yeah, no, I saw that, right. Okay, it's just like, I don't want to pick on Virtue here because I do like some of his stuff, and I'm not spelling that right, am I? But like, the kind of thumbnail I'm talking about, right? Like, this is not Virtue's fault per se, but there's so many videos out there that have like a thumbnail like this, specifically a white line in the middle, specifically a red VS, specifically, the two characters, one on each side, and then also you have to say something either along the lines of the honest truth, closer than you think, not close, or is unfair. Like, X, Y, or Z matchup is not fair. So again, I'm not trying to pick on Virtue here. Like, Virtue is just is fine. Like, I've enjoyed his content before. It's just sort of like the meta, I guess, right? Like, a lot of different people decided this was the style we were going to use, and this is the sort of stuff we were going to talk about, or this is the way we're going to represent the content. So that's the current meta, and some people will stick to it and other people won't stick to it, and that's fine. I make my janky shitty thumbnails, and I let that carry me where it will. Not here to judge, just saying. Off to a great start. this is gonna be a very surly episode. I've been in a mood over the past couple of weeks. You're getting to see slightly spicy John on this these couple of streams as I round the bend on this little arc in the story. So forgive me, or celebrate it if you if you wind up preferring the slightly more cynical version of this channel. But we're still gonna keep it light hearted overall. So I like your duck and the phoenix there. I'm very curious to know what their backstory is. But yeah, like, I like an Itachi versus Pain or a Minato versus Tobirama as much as the next nerd, but at a certain point I do, I kind of miss the days of the Choji versus Gamabuntas. Like, I do kind of pine for those weird, quirky bullshit matchups, because at least you were guaranteed to get something exciting and unique out of it. And at this point, there's only so much that can be said. Like there's like Tobirama versus Minato is an example. There's only like a few arguments that I've ever heard that you're probably going to hear. It's not like it's a new area of research where there's a bunch of new developments coming out, right? So I guess for me, it's less of a question of you know, we can't make videos about familiar topics. It's just like if we're going to, why don't we try to iterate on it a little bit, tweak it, come up with something silly. I like it when we have like weird ideas. Um, there it is, bloop. Yes. Are you familiar with the bloop? Sorry, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but do you know the bloop, the pseudo cryptid phenomenon thing? Darth Magog says, when there is no more room in Gehenna and Sheol, the Dark Lord rises to, well, comment on YouTube videos. I appreciate your presence as always, Lord Magog. I am really looking forward to that video. I saw was it a community post where you were talking about, I always blank on the names, but was it like Lot's Daughters or whatnot? You're like, stay tuned for something on the horizon. Looking forward to that. I keep repeating myself, but I will keep doing so because the sentiment holds. Congratulations and kudos on your hard work on the channel. Really been enjoying it and seeing all the stuff you've been putting out. And I feel like I had something else to share with you, but I'm blanking on it now, so I'll come back around. Oh, cool. So you are familiar with the bloop. Yeah, one of my early like pieces of music that I composed, if you want to call it that, I was just messing around with like electronic music stuff, but was like based on a sample of the bloop. I was fascinated by that shit. I've always been fascinated by, but also terrified by like deep water. I wouldn't call it a phobia, as I think it's very rational, but it is very intense. And I'm like, I don't know if you guys will probably be able to relate to this, right? Do you have like something in your lives that you find terrifying, but also you kind of like can't tear your eyes away? You're very intrigued by it, as scary and awful as it is. For me, that's the like deep, endless abyss of the ocean. And I'm just realizing that I don't have my border on. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Should be kicking in any minute. Okay, I think I see it now. But yeah, so let me see. Oh, sorry, it says it genuinely feels like a genjutsu. I'll see someone post a video and I'm like, didn't you already make this video? And they have, but in a collab on another channel, and they're all like, it isn't, yeah, it isn't close, or it's not fair, or brutal honesty. I think the honest truth is the weirdest one to me, because it's like, what other form of truth is there? Like, why wouldn't you be honest? Do you really need to come forward and say, oh, by the way, this video in particular, this one is going to be honest, just so you know? And then the brutal honesty too. I mean, like, that's mostly a Noodles thing, but I have seen other people with that title, and it's like, really, what's brutal about it? What exactly is so harsh? Where's the tough love? And it doesn't usually wind up being brutal, which is a good thing. But it's just like, I don't know. At least I have my disagreements with Sage, and more so when I go back and watch his videos. But credit where credit is due. Naruto Explained, Naruto, is it Naruto University or something? Let me see. Naruto Geography. I am not typing very well tonight. Yeah, so Naruto University. I think Naruto University is an excellent title, especially if you're going to, brand yourself as an educator, which Sage does. I think this thumbnail is fucking awesome. It's simple, it's clear, it's clean, it's crisp, and other complimentary C words. It conveys exactly what it needs to. It draws the eye. It is a topic that doesn't get talked about in a whole lot of detail, but it is an interesting topic, and it's one that you can dive into deep in a deep way. There's a lot of depth to it. The video itself is well edited, well produced. The length as well is long enough that if you just glance at that time code, you're probably going to be like, oh, there's a lot of meat here. Like, there's enough stuff for me to sink my teeth into without this being like a whole, I don't know, some weirdo talking for 4 hours straight about Universal Kaguya or some shit, right? It's like a little bit easier to digest. But it's like just the right like length, so to speak. Sage is really good when it comes to like his channel identity and branding. I think charismatic, or what's that term for it? Like a pretty iconic logo. Maybe a little dark, a little murky, but overall like pretty recognizable and stand out and unique. And then a lot of his videos as well, right? Like optimal teams. That's an interesting concept. I really miss these thumbnails. I used to fucking love these. That was one of the things that attracted me to his channel in the first place, because it's like so many people do the red on white and the slash in the middle and stuff like that. I love this. I don't know what you would call this, but just like the black and white line traces with this sort of sketchy circle in the middle with the black and the very simple kind of minimalistic thing that he used to do. This is great too. I mean, you have the background is well contrasted with the foreground. There's a very clear thing in the focus. It's bright. It attracts the eye. It's well composited and everything. This as well, like very simple, very clean, very well done overall. But like going back to some of his earlier videos, I love this shit. I really, really love these thumbnails. Very simple, very straightforward. It feels very unique to him, and even stuff like this, right? It feels like you immediately know, okay, this is a Sage video. Whereas some of this stuff up here, there's a lot of people who do stuff in this style, with a whole bunch of panels in the background and then, a character in the front or something like that. And then everybody and their mother does, like red on white and a slash in the middle. But it's tough, like my whatchamacallit, Itachi versus Pain video, and also my other, like the Kakazu versus Pain debate review, they both started, with that kind of imagery and iconography in them, so to speak. Like, if we go to my channel for a sec, and you just, like, go to the start of the video, pretty soon you'll see, like, I do the same exact thing. Character on the right, character on the left, and I don't think I put the VS there, but I might as well have, right? And then same thing with this one. Character on the right, character on the left. I think I even used some of the same graphics. And VS in the middle, if I'm not mistaken. Because it's just like, it's a really easy way of conveying very succinctly. Yeah, see? Very succinctly, very straightforwardly, and very eye-catchingly. Hey, this fucking guy, that other fucking guy. They're fighting. Shut up and watch. It's like everybody just gets it. Man, this is kind of rough looking back at this. No borders, no outlines, like different shading and lighting and stuff. The spacing between the letters is pissing me off. But okay, so I think I've gotten a little bit better at my graphic design since then. But anyway, this is not the point of this stream. So let me actually do a tiny stream intro here. Welcome for folks who are new to the channel, for folks who are returning. It's great to see you regardless. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some time on this stream this evening or watching the video back. This is another in a series of videos that I'm doing discussing Universal Naruto. If you're not familiar with that term, it is the idea or concept that Naruto characters, potentially including Naruto himself, have the power output to destroy a universe, or specifically, not just any universe of any arbitrary size, a universe that is equivalent in size, scope, energy content, whatever, to our own. Or that said characters have another feat that's comparable to that, like an AP feat or a creation feat or something like that. And the idea is that there are certain characters in Naruto who are thought to have universal feats even though they don't destroy a universe. For example, Kaguya is sometimes said to move the entire universe out of the way when she summons her dimensions. Momoshiki has statements. Some people claim that he creates a universe, So my goal with these videos is to examine those claims to see if they hold up and to see where they lead and what the implications of them are. And as I've been researching them and trying to understand them better, I've personally kind of come to this perspective that there are just no good arguments that I've seen. The arguments that are brought up are oftentimes, let's just say, misinformed and confused, and oftentimes incurious. I don't want to outright say dishonest, but sometimes it does feel that way. And I think it's really nobody's fault per se, but it is just sort of like a misinformation meta that's been plaguing the community for a while. So I want to do whatever tiny part I possibly can to just try and put information out there that helps balance the scale a little bit. And if you're watching this, you might wind up disagreeing with everything I say, and that's totally fine. Like, I'm not out here specifically to prove Naruto isn't universal, or certainly not to make anybody feel stupid or belittled at all by me disagreeing with them. Even if I get, like, spicy, if I get, like, aggressive or whatever, and say, this is fucking stupid, I hate this, whatever. Understand, that it's not an attack on any person or any person's perspective. Even the content creators that I'm kind of pissed with, it's not like actually meant to be adversarial. It's meant to be peer review, and it's meant to just give you guys access to like a counterpoint and some data to go along with it, so that y'all can make your own decisions and just have a different way of looking at it, and then you can come up with your own conclusions. And I want to emphasize this. I've been saying this for a little while now, but like, headcanon is not a four-letter word. It's not a bad thing. It's not derogatory. So if I say like, hey, if this is in your headcanon, that's fine. You know, in a debate, that might be used as like a dismissive thing. Oh, that's just headcanon or whatever. But no, like, you know, we're interpreting art and we have a right, and I think we should be encouraged to develop our own like unique theories. Something that got drilled into my head the first year or so of doing this is that like, if you can't prove an argument in the context of a debate to the point where you're winning the competition against somebody else, then your argument or perspective doesn't have merit. Like, if you can't actually prove with solid evidence that passes a debate gauntlet what you believe to be true or how you feel about something, then it just has no merit and it's dismissed and it's considered like a waste of people's time. That's fucking bullshit. Like, within the context of a debate, sure, you're expected to bring evidence. You're supposed to support your evidence in an honest way, in a way that can be validated logically and empirically. Yeah, if you're engaging in that competition, you're supposed to follow the rules and have a fair bout. But like, you don't need to compete with anybody to develop a valid interpretation of a piece of artwork. And that's something that like people forget when they turn the whole fucking thing into a competition. So, you know, let this be a reminder that no matter what like demeaning bullshit other people might say to you for disagreeing over this shit, like, as long you're entitled to come up with your own ideas about stuff, right? So that applies to everybody. Just try to treat each other decently, for the love of God. It's not that serious. It's just a fucking manga. But anyway, it's a manga that I care a lot about, which is why I've spent hundreds of hours at this point yapping incessantly about all this stuff. So tonight I'm going to partially be responding to a video by Key on the subject of Multiversal Naruto, or Universal Naruto rather. As always, I think it's very important to listen to videos in context. I don't want to be accidentally misrepresenting people, and especially since I'm going to be like taking things, like chopping things up and responding to things out of order. You know, do me a favor personally and do yourselves a favor and go and watch Key's video in context. Let me find it real quick. And get it from the horse's mouth. Like, even if you don't, like, you're like me, you might wind up like violently disagreeing with some of the stuff in here, but you should hear it directly from the person, not through like a secondary source, like chopped up like I'm gonna do. So channel name is Key, at Von Key. This is the title of the video. Go watch it if you're interested. Guaranteed that you're going to learn something from this video. You'll get something out of it, even if you disagree with it. It's only fair to listen to it in context. So we're going to be mostly talking about Momoshiki tonight. We talked about Kaguya previously. We talked about Road to Ninja. We talked about the Izanagi and the other Mangekyo Jutsu. The last thing to cover, really, beyond just responding to individual videos and individual claims, is just to talk a little bit about the Momoshiki and the Otsutsuki, sort of what their goals are, like what they're doing, and whether or not they are capable of creating universes. And to jump to the like conclusion, to kind of give you an abstract, I guess, you know, people's claims are that Momoshiki, in regards to Universal Momoshiki, the claims are basically that there's a statement somewhere, we'll talk about where and whether or not it's valid, but like there's a statement that Momoshiki created a universe. The term universe is used, so I don't know, let's just go ahead and assume that that universe scales to our universe in terms of its how much energy it would take to create it. Therefore, Momoshiki is universal. Therefore, characters that scale to him are universal as well, etc., etc. And then this is backed up by the fact that other Otsutsuki, like Kaguya, might have other universal feats. I think, and I hope I've done a decent job of establishing over the past couple weeks, that I don't think there's any solid evidence supporting Kaguya being universal at all, but something that is, or Obito or Madara or any of that. But something that I just want to remind everybody is that universal, right, like I mentioned before, doesn't just mean you create any universe of any arbitrary size. At least according to places like Versus Battles Wiki and I guess now Comic Vine and Character Stats and Profiles Wiki, the purpose of creating tiers of power like mountain level and island level and stuff like that is specifically to say, okay, if a character is like in this tier, and we know that they are called a mountain level character or whatever, then that is telling us in shorthand, in abbreviated form, that they can output at least this amount of energy, right? So there's no, like, we all know that mountains can be different sizes and shapes and makeups and stuff like that. There's no real point to using a term like mountain level unless we're referring to like a mountain of like a standard size that we agree upon. So when it comes to universal, something to be aware of is that like people will say, like take this as an example, right? When Orochimaru creates his like internal space that he uses to transfer souls of other, or like his soul into other people's bodies, right? Like he calls it his universe, and he says when Sasuke takes him over, like this is my universe is the term Viz uses. This is my space. I think in Japanese he uses the term like Jikukan, which is other reality or something like that. I can go like listen. If you watch the anime in Japanese, it's very clear. Like in that scene you can hear the word that he uses paired with the subtitles. It's very clear to hear. I just don't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, I think it's Jikukan. No, I'm sorry, it's Ikukan. Ikukan is what he says. So let's actually just take a look at that real quick. Ikukan definition, I think it's like alternate world or something like that. Unusual space, other dimension. Okay, so yeah, different space, different sky. Okay, so Orochimaru in the Viz, they translated it to universe. And if you wanted to, you could say, okay, Orochimaru created a universe, so he's universal. But if you actually look at the dimensions of the space, I mean, it's a very small space. It's enclosed. It's obviously not. Like, there's no forward evidence, no positive evidence at all to suggest that it is, the size of our universe. And to emphasize that before we get into like the meat and potatoes of tonight's discussion, remember that there are trillions and trillions of stars, and also trillions and trillions of planets, and also trillions and trillions of things, or actually quintillions potentially of black holes. And think about the fact that like black holes individually like form up the centers of galaxies and are like gravitational centers for those galaxies. Think about the fact that like black holes are so powerful in terms of their gravitational input or like force or attractive force that even light can't escape from them. And think about there being a quintillion of those. Think about the amount of energy that it would actually take to be able to break a black hole or destroy a black hole or annihilate a black hole. Think about the physical reality and practical implications of what that would even involve, and then how much energy that would take. And then understand, if you're saying that a character is universal by power scaling metrics like VSB, you are saying that a character can output that amount of energy quintillions upon quintillions of times for all the stars and planets, and well, quintillions for black holes and then less for stars and planets. But there's other shit like quasars and other like weird phenomena out there as well you have to account for. So does it really make sense, like really, literally, actually? And I see your question, Darth Megug, and I'm kind of looping back around to this. If you honestly read the series, just the series itself, the manga, the anime, you just experience the main canon of the story. Obviously, no character is even like depicted as being strong enough to blow up a star. Like, there's no evidence for that whatsoever. The only evidence comes from peripheral sources and very, very liberal and very creative interpretations of certain things in peripheral sources, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. Again, headcanon is fine. If you personally prefer the idea that Naruto characters are X, Y, or Z level of strength, and that makes you happy and you enjoy the series more that way, that's totally fine. Just please don't go like representing it to other people as the correct way to view the series. I'm gonna post or like show a video from Sage's Thick Calves later on. He starts the video off by saying like, we know for a fact that Momoshiki created a universe. No, we fucking don't. No, we fucking don't. We do not know that, and we certainly do not know it for a fact. So don't go around like pretending like this shit is ironclad and it's not just some tangential spiraling personal interpretation, which are fine. It's just not fine if you misrepresent that to other people. And to answer your question, I've been trying genuinely, without prejudice, like as much as I can be, I'm human. I'm always going to be somewhat biased, but like I personally am motivated by trying to understand where people are coming from. It's not enough. Like obviously, there's an incredibly nitpicky part of my brain that just likes disassembling arguments, or not even disassembling, because that implies that I think they're necessarily wrong. But just like diving into them and dissecting them and trying to figure out what makes them work. So there's something really interesting about breaking down an argument into its constituent parts and then researching it and seeing where it takes me. I really like that. But also, if two people have, like, I start from the base assumption that people who spent this amount of time, like Sage or Virtue or Six or, even Noodles to a certain extent, like all these people who spend hundreds if not thousands of hours reading through the series and making content and editing it and spending money investing in their channels and promoting it and debating people, it's a lot of fucking time to spend on anything, let alone like a hobby like this. And I like to start from the base assumption that anybody doing this like actually cares about what they're talking about and wants to understand it, at least to a certain extent. Most of the people I've interacted with are intelligent. Most of the people I've interacted with, I think, as human beings, are passionate people. So it's weird to me that people who are intelligent and passionate and hardworking and dedicated still come to such wild disagreements about certain things, and I want to understand where that comes from. Because ideally, I'd like for us to all get on the same page, not to be like a fucking fascist about it. We all have to believe the same thing, but like I want to figure out where the disagreements are coming from, and oftentimes I think it's just misunderstanding. So I try to ask that question. Okay, like if X, Y, or Z person has this perspective, I disagree with it. How did I come to my conclusion? How did they come to their conclusion? And a trend that I've noticed consistently is like listen for the phrase like how high can we get X, Y, or Z character, right? How high can we get Naruto? How fast can we get Naruto? There's this perspective of like let's try to find the arguments that expose the maximum possible value, as opposed to trying to let the evidence lead us to where it actually is. So if you come across the term sekai, sekai can mean world, or it can mean society, or it can mean universe. So if we, I'm not sure if this is the case, but if Momoshiki was described as creating his own sekai, we could say, oh, well, if we take that term sekai to mean universe, then we can get Momoshiki to Universal. And then, going from there, we can get other characters to Universal. And then, well, where does that take us? What's our motivation? I think genuinely one of the motivations is that the Naruto universe probably doesn't scale as high as other universes. And if you're repping like Bleach, and I don't know, maybe JJK, I don't know that as well, but Bleach is one that comes up a lot, One Piece, and obviously Dragon Ball. So some of the other big names in the community. And if you're involved in like the cross verse or between verse debate scene, and Naruto is your favorite verse, you're probably going to want to rep your verse. You're probably going to want the thing that you love and that you're passionate about to be correctly represented and honored, and for other people not to make fun of you and put you down. But unfortunately, there is this bias. There is this kind of like bullshit, like bully adjacent narrative of, well, Naruto is for gays, and being gay is bad because Naruto talks about his feelings with his Sasuke, and they talk about how that feels to be a shinobi, whereas Goku's being cool and badass and manly, and he has his shirt off, and he's got big pecs, and he punches way hard, and Naruto can punch as hard as he can because Goku can punch a hole the sun in the face and kill it if he wanted to, and Naruto couldn't do that. It's it just becomes part of this like weird toxic my dad could beat up your dad rhetoric, essentially. And it sucks to be on the receiving end of that. So like going back to, we talked about this last week, but going back to Key's video, if you ignore this idiot up here and just scroll down to look at how people are responding, right? Like put aside what I said, just listen to how people respond to this video. Another W video from the GOAT. Amazing scaling. Naruto versus Powerscaling has been quite underrated lately. Okay. How high do you think Naruto would get to, etc., etc.? I loved it. Super Dad. Okay, let's skip that stuff for now. Hagoromo scale would be dope. He's very underrated and is downplayed a lot. Keep going. I want to try to find the specific thing. Um, so I'm trying to find it. Oh, here we go. I think I mentioned this before, but I want to bring this up again from user ADR Silva. Silva says, "Yo, bro, thank you for far not downplaying Naruto, right? I honestly think Naruto can beat Goku, though it depends on what version you think it is. Plus, I wonder how far Naruto and Sasuke truly make it into the Dragon Ball verse along with the Bleach verse. Both were at maximum capacity as possible, right? So if you just keep an eye out for people saying things like this in the comment section of various videos, and you'll notice a trend that people want the Naruto verse to be represented and girdered or like buttressed. I don't know what the right term for it is, but they want it to be like reinforced, and they want it to be done so that it can stand up to other verses in these cross-verse battles, so it cannot be underplayed, underrepresented. They want us to have a strong showing, basically. And so I don't think that people who like upscale or overscale, from my perspective, the Naruto universe, are necessarily out to deceive people or to fuck with people's interpretations, but they are trying to do their best to say like, okay, how do we get Naruto to look to like stand up taller in these cross-verse competitions? How do we like increase his stature? What's the best we can do? And there is a certain fun and a certain, kind of intriguing challenge to that, but it's a double-edged sword. And if you wind up like way overplaying it, it just kind of makes you look bad, and then you do wind up misinforming other people, and then like kind of deceiving yourself. Not to put too fine a point on it, that sounds too strong. Sounds too pretentious. What I mean is that like you just wind up like not getting a clear picture of the stuff that you're reading, and it kind of sucks because I think you cheat yourself from really understanding the shit. And so this like fucking 20 minutes later, sorry Magog, like to answer your question, I think it's just like there why would you I'm doing a bit, by the way, but like why would you interpret a pocket dimension as a silly little teeny tiny room size dimension when dimension could mean universe and universe could mean universal? It's the same thing we talked about with the Izanagi, right? Like Noodles brought this up, Key brought this up. The Izanagi could esoterically be described as rewriting reality. Wait a minute, rewriting reality? Reality is part of the fabric of the universe. Rewriting the universe, universal. Danzo is universal, so Obito and Madara must be multiversal. Multiversal Naruto confirmed. And it's like, I know I sound mocking. I know I sound like kind of sarcastic, and I feel bad about that. Like, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad or to be mean, but I do get very frustrated with that kind of shit, because it's like, I understand the desire to, try to find the most impressive versions of these feats. But if you do that, you just like have to ignore what's written on the page. You have to like totally skew and distort what's actually happening. And I think that's kind of disrespectful to the art, for one. And I think it's kind of disrespectful with other people in the community who you might be like trying to educate or whatever. And especially with, just to be blunt, with people like Sage, if you brand yourself as an educator, if that's in your channel branding, and you accept paid memberships from people, you take donations from people to provide that, ostensibly to provide that service of being an educator, and you just do that kind of shit, well, you're not educating. You're just providing like interpretations that are miseducation. They're misinformation because they're completely at a disconnect from the data that you're supposed to be supporting. So then we get into ethical considerations, right? And especially with people like Key, who take other people's work and translations and don't credit them and don't link to the sources. Like, they'll take their translations and their calcs and just like not provide adequate credit. Well, then you're profiting off of, I mean, I don't know if Key's channel is monetized, to be clear, but like you are benefiting one way or another off of other people's work that you're not supporting. So that gets into another ethical consideration. But basically at its core, yeah, the idea, I think, is to try to challenge yourself to find the way to, almost to be like a lawyer, right? Like, you're Naruto's lawyer. You're not supposed to get everything completely accurate and factual and true. You have to defend your client, and you have to make your client look as good as possible. How are you going to do that? Well, technically, well, by definition, well, logically it follows, well, I don't see any evidence to the contrary. And what contradicts my statement? The burden of proof is on you, sir. Right? Just like all of that shit. Defend your fucking client. that is your goal, right? So, and I get it. I actually kind of respect it that we're all basically supposed to be Saul Goodmans for our own like individual universes. I get it. I do. I appreciate it to a certain extent, but like that to me that can't take precedent over genuinely understanding the shit. And that can't ever come at the expense of like misleading other people. Um anyway, does that answer your question? Fucking 20 ass minutes later. Magog also excuse me. Magog also says there's certainly a meta to making power scaling videos. It's disappointing. Yeah. Well, there's the thing. I think with any YouTube content, the algorithm. I mean, like you're a content creator who's quite prolific. You have a big, basis of what's the term for it? Like base of people who've subscribed to you. You've cultivated and curated a community, and I see the hustle with the posts and the quizzes and stuff like that. So I'm sure you're aware that if you want to like achieve a certain kind of success on YouTube, that there's a bit of a formula to it. And from my perspective, you're not doing a meta, right? From my perspective, you're just finding multiple ways to engage with your community on a consistent basis. It feels very genuine from what I see. But also, like, I didn't think thumbnails were important at all. I used to not think that they were important at all. Big fucking mistake. They are very important, and the quality of your thumbnail does very greatly affect your both the presentation of your channel and the appeal that it has to potential viewers. So I don't intend to ever make a dime off of this channel, and if I do, it'll go into like just hiring artists and stuff and editors or whatever to just help the channel, like help other people in the community. Like I saved up some money to hire an artist to do animations that I mentioned before, right? So I'll just do more of that stuff. But at the end of the day, if I do want to grow it, I will probably study other people's channels, figure out what they're doing right, and then copy it. Like take from the the best and make it your own. Who was it that said that? I can never remember. Tara something. But like obviously don't fucking plagiarize. Don't rip off other people's style. The point is to go in and like, just copy their thumbnail and then like change it 10% or whatever. But like figure out, okay, the reason why Sage gets a lot of clicks on this video is because his thumbnail is eye-catching, it's clean, it's got an interesting topic, and it's got an iconic look to it. So no, don't copy that, right? But like make sure that when you then go make your own thumbnail, make sure it's clean, make sure it's succinct, make sure it is eye-grabbing, and that could be considered part of the meta. But I think that's probably more abstract and more high level than what you're talking about. There's also this lower level of like, I mean, Swag Kage used to talk about this all the time. Like, he would say that he would put out like a video on some topic that he was really interested in and passionate about, and then it would get like 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 views in a month or so. And then he would just put out some 10-minute shit about which Uchiha is the best Uchiha out of all the Uchiha. This Uchiha versus that Uchiha. And as long as like Madara or Sasuke was in the thumbnail, it would like immediately blow up, right? So you have to then be confronted with that choice of, okay, if I'm going to grow this month, if that's my priority, if I'm going to make bank this month, if that's my priority, I'm probably going to do a fucking Uchiha video. And that's a tough choice, right? It's we would all like to be able to create art freely without restriction and have it be sustainable. I understand that if some people are trying to make this into a business, they don't have that luxury. But also, I think maybe naively, I think there's a way to sustain your business model while also carving out your own niche. And if you don't, if you just wind up jumping on the bandwagon like everybody else, inevitably that bubble pops, right? Like that shit can only last for so long, because once everybody attaches to that same trend, the market just gets flooded. It gets super saturated with the same shit, and then everybody gets tired of it, and then everybody leaves in droves once the new hotness comes along, right? And that cycle just keeps going and going and going. So I guess if that's what you want to do, just jump on the trend and surf it as long as you can. But it's going to pop. It always fucking does. So you better have an exit strategy ready, and hopefully you manage to find a way to do your art without burning yourself the fuck out and just like consigning yourself to having to chase whatever trends other people are setting. Like that sounds miserable to me. Like I would rather work at fucking Costco than indefinitely, than have to constantly be shifting around like that. Shout out to Costco workers. I'm not trying to be fucking derogatory there either, but I mean, like, hopefully you know what I mean, right? I just want to be sensitive because D1 in his video with somebody sent me, I think it was Mr. Narrative who sent me like Bubbles versus D1 debate, and D1 just kept being like, you sound like a fucking McDonald's worker, you sound like a like, can somebody please mute this, like, huh, would you like fries with that motherfucker over here? And I'm like, come on, man. People at McDonald's work hard. Food is tasty. They help other people get tasty food. Don't fucking talk shit about them. But anyway, I'm not trying to start a whole thing there. Okay, so breathe in for a second. I'm gonna answer chat. First of all, hello Loha. Sorry, it's been like I don't know how long since you initially messaged and I didn't say hi. I apologize. It's good to see you. I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you're having a good weekend. And yes, the same tribalism as sports team fans. There's a good friend of mine who has kind of opened my eyes to the fact that tribalism is like this rampant plague in pretty much every community for whatever reason, and in real life too, not just like fictional communities or whatever. Obviously, like humans, we really like putting ourselves into groups and feeling like we are in the right group, and we like throwing down against other other groups. I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's like an evolutionary thing, but yeah, it's a whole unnecessary thing, and I hope we are able to kind of move away from as we continue, like hopefully growing as a species. But that's getting maybe a little too philosophical. Yeah, so Megog, I hope I answered your question. I honestly, I think the pocket dimension shit is genuinely more interesting. Like, to me, this character is so strong they can blow up all the suns and all this, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't care. Like, a big explosion is not really interesting to me. The stuff that we talked about with Saria last time about how, and Saria, I apologize in advance, I'm gonna get this wrong, but like, you were mentioning how some of the extra dimensions that are incorporated into like supersymmetry are not necessarily like nth higher degree spatial dimensions, that keep going up and getting more complex and more compounded, but actually might be like teeny and small and like basically just like folded in like highly compressed dimensions that exist for the purpose of giving the strings like a place to resonate and stabilize, if I'm getting that right. And to me, that's so much cooler than than just saying like. So if you are gonna talk about Kaguya having a supersymmetry dimension and or supergravity dimension, and that being part of how strong she is, I think it's much cooler to use that as an opportunity to talk about like, okay, well, if it is an 11th dimensional space, let's talk about how some of those smaller folded up dimensions would actually provide like feed into models of string theory or supersymmetry. Let's talk about what supersymmetry and string theory actually are, and then tie that into like general relativity, because it's a great teaching tool, right? It's a great learning opportunity to be able to share that stuff with people. And to me, that's so much cooler than just like, well, Shibai was in the 6th spatial dimension, so he was, you couldn't even touch him. And the shit that Saria was saying as well about like being in the 4th spatial dimension isn't just like being infinitely stronger in the amount of mass you can displace or any of that shit. It's like if you can, if you're in the 4th spatial dimension and you can perceive 3rd dimensional beings, you could potentially see every angle of their body simultaneously and every like layer of their body inside and out, like every cell, as well as the outside of them that we normally see. Like if you try to, if you're a 3rd dimensional being and you try to go through a closed door, you have to obey the rules and restrictions that the door imposes on you. But if you're in the 4th dimension, you can actually just like step outside and around the entire dimension to then get around the door. And shit like that is so much fucking cooler and presents so many more like intricate and complex and interesting ideas for dimensional like the 4D sort of chess that you could engage in terms of a fight. I don't know if you've played, I don't think I'm going to be able to find this, but God of War or Ragnarok, what is it, like Dwarf Dimension or something? There's this moment in this game early on, I think when they meet Sindri, and basically like Kratos is traveling with the son Atreus. Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. So hopefully I don't get copyright struck for this. Like, so if you're not familiar with this, like this is Kratos. He's a god of war. He's real strong. He's like a Greek god. This is Sindri. They're in Norse mythology land, and Sindri is a dwarf. A dwarf within the context of Norse mythology, and he has the ability to go invisible, so to speak, right? So let's hear the explanation here.
There is nowhere here to hide.
Oh, that. It's a little trick my people can pull. A special way of not being seen.
You can be invisible?
More like I can step into the realm between realms. And your mind doesn't understand what it's seeing, so it sees nothing at all. That's how we avoid ever having to actually use the weapons we craft. It doesn't seem to work on dragons, though.
So like there's more scenes and more instances where he just like sort of folds into the air, and 1 second he's there, 1 second he's not. And the way that they pull it off is so seamless and smooth in terms of the gameplay integration as well. But it really does genuinely feel like there is another dimension that is overlaid or interleaved with the main dimension, and he can just kind of like step into it and out of it at all times, or like at any time that he wants to. And it just happens to be the case that Kratos and Atreus, his son, can't see or perceive that. So that to me is really interesting. Like, imagine Kratos fighting Sindri. Obviously, Kratos is way stronger, at least in terms of the feats that we see. You know, he has like much better accomplishments. We don't really see Sindri in combat all that much, and even then, he's not a very strong warrior. But a hypothetical fight between Sindri and Kratos becomes much more interesting, not because Sindri is physically more powerful given his access to this other dimension, not because he can like move an infinite number of three-dimensional spaces or whatever the fuck else, right? It's that he now has access to this different form of spatial movement, of translocation, that gives him a non-conventional and unconventional advantage over Kratos. And could he use that to overcome the vast difference in their power based on their feats? That's really interesting. That's a really cool asymmetric matchup. That's our fucking Choji versus Gamabunta, right? Like, so I feel like we're actually cheating ourselves out of the opportunity for more creative and interesting matchups by saying like, no, Kaguya just pushes the whole dimension, so she's physically strong enough to push an entire universe, so she's physically just blowing up the universe. Like, fuck off. Like, I'm sorry to be mean, but like, you know, it's just boring, man. It's just kind of basic, if I'm being honest. Darth Magog going up a little bit. Darth Magog says, I kind of feel like it's a little worse anime fandoms versus sports fandom, in my opinion. Of course, I think I've had more conversation with sports fans in real life. Oh yeah, dude, like I told you guys that I used to live in Italy, and like you probably heard that you know, people, there's this one incident where people snuck in flare guns, which they were able to get through the metal detectors, onto the pitch, or into the stands rather. And then when a goal was scored, they would all take out their flare guns and fire them, not at the opposing team to distract them, not to like give their own team disadvantage. They would wait, and if their own team that they were rooting for wound up missing a goal, as a form of punishment, they would just rain down hellfire in the form of flare rounds at them. So like, that is how intense people are at a baseline about soccer in Italy. And then the tribalism comes along with like the team chants and like the uniforms and everything that goes into like the cultural pseudo warfare. And I have to wonder if it's basically like almost like a simulated form of tribal warfare. You know, like we have this part of our brain that really wants to engage in like tribalistic confrontation, and the real benefit of sports is not so much the entertainment of watching the feats, which are impressive, but it's more like it gives us an opportunity to kind of tap into that like tribal competition thing that's just like deeply embedded in our DNA. Not to be a little unscientific about it, you know, but just, I don't know, it's kind of fun to think about, I guess. Yeah, the burden shift. Yeah, no, burden to proof is really important. I didn't mean to be too glib about that, but yeah, like, that was really disappointing with the D1 versus Bubbles thing, because I do genuinely think that D1, when he keeps his cool, he can make good arguments. He can spot traps and avoid them. He can like actually substantiate his claims. But I think he kind of like gets to a point in certain debates where he either gives up or gets frustrated, and then he is more than happy to be like to basically try to gaslight his opponent into thinking that his opponent has to um, provide proof for things that they have not either brought up or aren't sticking to. And he's just like, you see what I mean if you listen to that debate. He just like constantly tries towards the latter half of that debate to like take things and be like, no, you have to prove this now, right? What was the example? He was like, I think this. I'm gonna try not to strawman here because I only listened to the debate once, so forgive me if I'm getting some of this wrong. But I think his argument was essentially that Bubbles wanted to use some data from Part 2 in Naruto, and they were discussing Lee versus Sasuke, and they were discussing their matchup in Part 1. So D1 was like, well, no, you can't use evidence from Part 2 because there are so many things in Part 2 that that retcon things in Part 1. So if now we're bringing in Part 2, you can't assume that anything in Part 2 is still true from Part 1. Like, you have to basically start over and not use anything from Part 1 unless you verify it in Part 2 first, because there's so many retcons and so many things that change. And so Bubbles was like, okay, can you give me an example? And D1 was like, yeah, it's said in Part 1 that in order to be the Hokage, you need to be the strongest, and we know that Tsunade is not the strongest in the village when she's Hokage. And then he was like, and now, so it's your burden of proof, Bubbles, it's your burden of proof to demonstrate to me why whatever piece of data you used is valid, since we know that there are retcons in Part 2, and we know that a good example of that is Tsunade being stronger, right? Like, he didn't actually build a case for why the retcons established such a precedent that we needed to discard everything from Part 1 like that. He didn't build a case for why Tsunade is like the not the strongest person in the village. Maybe you think Kakashi is stronger at the time, maybe you think Danzo or somebody else is. That's fine, but I mean, it's not like written in stone, right? You make that positive claim, you have to support it, and he just like refused to. And it was at that point of the debate where it's like, okay, he's just like not engaging with his interlocutor anymore. The debate is over. It's done because he just like stopped caring, I guess. That was the impression that I got. And that's something you have to be aware of, is like, hey, no, none of us have to do these debates. None of us have to do this content. So like, I don't know. I figure if you're going to take the time to show up and research and engage with the topic to begin with, might as well just like try to have a good faith conversation. But it's harder, easier said than done, I guess. Yeah. Darth Magog says, anime fandoms versus sports fandom, in my opinion, of course, I think, oh yeah, the sports fans in real life, burden shift. You say you're the farthest thing from prolific. Well, I don't know about that, man. I see him. I'm not trying to put a label on you that you disagree with, for sure. But I do feel like you've been making content regularly and putting out good quality content, and also supporting your uploads with the community engagement, which for me, that's the hardest part. Like, just remembering to do things on time with like thumbnails and community posts and polls and stuff like that. Like, I enjoy it, but it's also just like, I'm such a procrastinator. I get like so nervous about uploading anything that I like always leave it to the last minute. So I'm very inconsistent with that. But so I respect the I hate the word hustle, but it's the appropriate word here. I respect the hustle. And I do I do hate how gamified YouTube is. Now with that fucking hype feature, I keep seeing that like on my channel, YouTube wants so desperately for me to engage in that fucking hype thing, and I'm just not going to touch it. It's so annoying. I don't need to know that a video is hyped by some other random people on the internet. If I'm interested, I'll watch it. Like, just chill. Hey, Dr. Strangle, sorry, I saw your message before. I've been keeping you waiting for a reply. Sorry for leaving you hanging there. Dr. Strangle says, oh no, almost missed this. See you when I catch up with the stream while watching at 2x speed. Oh yeah, no worries, dude. I appreciate you stopping by. Usually the first hour of the stream, as you're probably familiar with now, we usually just kind of shoot the shit. So we haven't really gotten into any like deep data dives or anything like that. But I appreciate you listening in. I appreciate you being willing to kind of sit through the preamble and all that. Let me know if you have any thoughts, of course. as we go. I'm way at, I have a huge backlog of people's content that I need to follow up on, that I'm hoping to spend some time with over the holidays. But I started reading your blog, and I looked at one of your calcs, and I left a comment, and I really enjoyed it. And I didn't fully understand all the math you were doing, because my brain not good for math, so good, real not good, very good. But I did see that you did good things with numbers, and I appreciate it. And I think your site in general is like already a really great resource. So I hope you continue to expand it, and I hope that you're able to that you find ways to share it with people in various communities, because I think people will get a lot out of seeing, you know, I think especially for casual viewers who just wind up like watching random Naruto YouTube videos, if they've never heard of a calc before and somebody just pulls out a calc and says like, well, this Bijou Bomb has been calced at Multi-Continental, and they just like show like a low res screenshot of like you know, like the term for it, just like a print screenshot of a something from VSB without credit, of course. They're going to get the impression that there's this mysterious realm of completely impenetrable math done by some cabal of calcers somewhere, and not have transparency into that. But you're actually showing the whole process. It's like well made and everything. So I think that's, you know, I commend you for doing that, and I hope that you wind up sharing it with people if you feel like that, with a wider audience. Loha says, for sure, an evolutionary thing, yeah. There are all kinds of benefits to being aggressive and dehumanizing to the other. Yeah, that's very sadly true, but it is true indeed. This topic is a huge black pill, but it's super interesting too. Yeah, black pill's a good term for it. And yeah, I'm sure like you'd probably get along with my buddy who is deep into that as well. I who knows more about it from a sociological and historical perspective. For me, it's just like I have my own opinions based on like my previous discussions with people based on religion. Like I used to be pretty big in like the atheist scene. Not pretty big in, like, I wasn't prominent. I didn't have an identity there, but like I spent a lot of time there, is what I'm trying to say. And I did try and engage with people in debates a lot. And you know, there was a whole era that I didn't necessarily get a whole lot out of, but I did see, you know, the discouraging thing was that like, even if you know, talk to somebody for hours and hours and hours, and you finally did connect, a lot of times that person would just say like, hey, I'm glad that we could connect as human beings. I'm not gonna change my mind. Like, I'm not gonna switch sides. That was something. Okay, sorry, this is a bit of a leap, but in addition to talking about like atheism and stuff like that, one of the things that I was fascinated at seeing is like how certain online like game adjacent communities started to shift right wing, I guess is one way to put it. That's probably not the right word for it, but like when JonTron, if you ever followed that guy, kind of came out and he had kind of xenophobic and classist and racist views, and then he started folding in with other, you know, YouTubers like Sargon of Akkad and I think Mahler and some other people like that, and that whole like pseudo intellectual critical sphere, it kind of became interesting to see the rhetoric when other people like Aaron of Game Grumps, you know, John used to be on Game Grumps, they used to be friends and collaborated. I think like Aaron said something along the lines of, somebody asked him if they would ever hire John back on the show, and he was like, not after all of that shit that went down. And what was really interesting to me is in the comments and the responses to Aaron's comment on that, is seeing people responding by basically saying like, you got no fucking loyalty, Aaron, you have no fucking loyalty, and that's despicable. And you follow up on that, you talk to people about it, and they're like, yeah, I don't care if John is a racist, I don't care, like, it sucks, you shouldn't be racist, you shouldn't be xenophobic and all that, but that's not the point. The point is that you're loyal to your friends, and you don't throw your friends under the bus, and you don't, like, you know, you basically throw down with your family. And I kind of get that, I kind of respect that, but at the same time, you know, you also have to be willing to hold people accountable for when they make mistakes like that. That's what your family is for, right? Like, you're not just supporting you blindly. And there was this real, very clear, very distinct line in the sand of, you're on this side and you're on the other, or you're on the other side. And that's determined first and foremost by who your connections are, and you are loyal to your connections. And then whatever beliefs or behaviors or anything come with that, well, that's not really all that important. right? Even if you could convince somebody that like what John Chan's you know, actions or statements were kind of reprehensible, you weren't going to convince them to unsubscribe because you have to stay loyal, right? So that's just like my tiny little corner of the internet that I happen to see, but I that for whatever reason that conversation like really changed my perspective on things, because it's like it's hard enough to just get somebody to listen to you, and it's hard enough to connect across these vast divides of differences of opinion and perspective. But even if you do that, then you have to navigate this like jungle of tribal defenses, so to speak, and that's really hard to do too. It's just so fucking exhausting after a while, you know. I have so much respect for people who can stick with it and actually connect with people that way. I tried so hard for a long time, and I just wasn't good at it. So, but I guess like me getting back into the Naruto stuff is a way of trying to reclaim some of that, I guess. Like trying to find a similar way to connect with people, but about something a little less serious, you know? Anyway, thank you for giving me a little soapbox. I appreciate getting to like share some of this stuff with y'all. Saria says, I'm back, sorry. Oh yeah, no problem. I understand you'll have to take some time and do some stuff. No worries, never any need for apologies, I promise. Saria says, remember how I said my mom will randomly start moving furniture even though her knee got replaced and your spine is kerfuckled? Yeah, I had to get up and help her. Well, had to. I chose to because my big sis says she wasn't helping because she knows better, and even though I agree, I'm far too soft, so I helped anyway. Remember how I said Clea reminded me partially of my sis? This is what I mean. This is what I meant. Yeah, that makes sense. That's good of you. That's good of you. I know that like there's an argument sometimes that you hear from people where like you have to be careful about enabling other people in that situation, or like letting them like emotionally pressure you into doing things, or themselves into doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But also, it's really hard when somebody's next to you who you love and care about, and they're about to do something that's going to hurt themselves, and just sit there and let it happen, right? Like, even if it inconveniences you. So I understand the difficulty of navigating that situation. I think you're very kind for looking out for her, especially after the stuff that you've shared in the past. So, you know, good for you. And please take whatever time you need to deal with that. And take care of your spine, too. Take care of yourself, you know? Saria also says, I'd say Shinji's doing what he is has more to do with arcane knowledge than having more dimensions to be. That's a totally fair interpretation. Yeah. I think that, you know, I don't know if you remember this from Doctor Who, but Doctor Who has this little, I think it's the 10th Doctor, has this thing that he wears around his neck that's like psychic paper, and it just makes it so that if you're looking directly at him, the paper like confuses your psyche or misdirects your attention, so that like he doesn't actually physically change or go into a different dimension or anything like that, but like your brain just can't process what it's seeing, and so you just don't see him even if you're looking directly at him, which is really cool. But I think even if that's not literally what Shinji's doing, like hopping between dimensions, it's still like a very useful metaphor visually for what I think anyway, for the stuff you were describing previously about, you know, a character walking around a door by entering and exiting another dimension. Like, that shit's really cool. And like, you can imagine Sindri, if we take the magic out of Ragnarok and replace it with a sci-fi equivalent, that's probably what it would look like, right? Does that make sense? Does that seem fair? Okay, so right on schedule, I think it's a good time to start transitioning into discussion of the topic at hand this evening, which again is going to be talking about Momoshiki, and specifically about arguments for Momoshiki being universal. So let me see if I can find this in Key's video specifically. If not, I might use one of Sage's videos. But basically, to summarize the argument, it's like this. As part of the universal argument for Naruto, the idea is that Momoshiki has a feat that is described as him creating a universe. And the assumption then goes that the universe, for all practical intents and purposes, scales in size or energy output or whatever to our universe. So it's a universal feat for Momo because he is creating a universe, and that universe kind of connects or is relative or relevant or whatever in size to our own. So universal Momoshiki, other characters who can scale to his power output would obviously be universal as well, and that is the core of the argument. So obviously, like, I want to make sure that if I'm addressing Key directly, we go through and listen to his video. I just want to see if he had anything specific to say about Momoshiki, or if it was just kind of woven in with the other things. If not, I'm gonna use the video from Sage. Oh, actually, this is probably it. So let me start from this point in his video. It's 10:19 in. I'm gonna play it for like 30 seconds, and if it's what I'm thinking of, we'll go from there. So let me just play it. Sorry, says I only said it because the IF dwarves were or if the dwarves were fourth dimensional, they'd be able to move through time the way we move through. But given that his brother is, yeah. How did I put the in front of I am my student? You're just like you're writing between dimensions of text. That's the explanation I would offer you. But yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like, wouldn't you say it'd be possible to move around through it, like up into a fourth spatial dimension and back down into a third spatial dimension without interacting abnormally with the dimension of time? I thought that was kind of the implication, right? Is that like you could still, like, even hypothetically have a 1,000th physical dimension, but still only have a singular dimension of time. Although now I'm really curious to know, like, what would a 3D, or like, what would a 3T and 3D space look like, right? What would multiple, because we have 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. What would multiple dimensions of time look like? Like, we can go backward and forward, we can think of that, but what would, like, going in and out of time look like? What would going up and down in time look like, you know? Or through, as opposed to, does that make sense? Like, that's so cool. I don't know if time supports a multi-dimensional model, like compounded like that, but it'd be interesting to hear about it. Anyway, Key's video, let's see what he has to say.
On top of having created it, this would easily make her WoW complex multiversal. Moving on to Boruto, we have the fact that Momoshiki has also created his own dimension in both the anime and the novel.
Okay, so Momoshiki, I'm gonna reduce the music and volume a little bit. So Momoshiki has created his own dimension, is what he said, in the movie and the novel. So let's continue with this.
Which is shown and said to contain stars.
Shown and said to contain stars. Okay, we do see some stars over here, stars over there, stars over there. And what does it say? His consciousness suddenly turned white, Boruto's Rasengan, blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, the 2 men were smiling slightly as they looked at Naruto's back in the light of the rising sun. Oh, which one did I comment on? Let me see. I think it was the very first one, because I think I started at the beginning. But, 1 second. Fate in Naruto. Yeah, let me see. I went to Naruto, and then I went to the bottom. Was it the Minato Speed Calc? No. Hang on a second. What the hell? It was one of the calcs that you did. I wonder if it didn't show it because I didn't sign in. Yeah, it was this one. It was the Minato Speed Calc. I definitely remember this with the stone and everything. This was the one. Did it not take my comment? Oh, that sucks. Okay, yeah, this is the one that I went through. You're seeing this on stream? It's not showing yet. Hang on. Oh, hang on. My broadcast is delayed. 1 sec. Okay. So, sorry if the audio just jumped forward a little bit. This is the one that I read. I really, really like this. This is awesome. And then I left a comment down here, and then it said, leave comment anonymously or create your own profile. I didn't want to create a profile at the time. And I posted it, and I thought it showed up here. I guess it didn't. So sorry about that. But this is the one. This is great. This is really, really good work. Yeah, so I'll just make a fucking account at some point. Okay, so 2 men were smiling slightly as they looked at Naruto's back in the light of the rising sun. Okay, let's continue.
This dimension also has entire civilizations.
Okay, this dimension has entire civilizations. Okay, he plans to indiscriminately eat up all of this star's chakra. They wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. Question of whether mankind who lived on this star would be able to greet tomorrow. You might have noticed a small issue with that. We'll come back to that in a minute.
On its planets, which implies that it must be extremely large given how rare life is in the universe.
Okay, so the argument is that Momoshiki's universe must be extremely large because in our universe, life is very rare to our current like ability to detect it. So conversely, his universe would have to be extremely large as well because each planet essentially that got created would have a very, very small chance of having life on it.
This dimension is in many instances also referred to as a parallel world and an alternate dimensions. Momoshiki's dimension is
So it's referred to as a parallel world or an alternate dimension.
also directly referred to as an isekai on multiple instances, which in Japanese directly refers to a parallel universe that mirrors our universe.
Okay, and the term isekai refers to a parallel universe which mirrors our universe.
Thus, we can confidently say that Momoshiki would be Universal Plus for creating that dimension.
Okay, so and that right there, Magog should I think if you like listen to that, that's probably the most succinct and direct example of how we get from dimension to universe. Right, that there, right? There's a statement of a character creating a dimension. What do we know about the dimension? Well, it has stars and it has life. Therefore, it's probably really, really fucking big. Therefore, fuck it. It's a universe and it's equivalent to ours. So he's Universal Plus. Because of that. Insert angry crow grunting noises. So that's good. Let's just start with that. So, as we went through here, you probably noticed a few things. First and foremost, he didn't really show any fucking footage from the movie, unless it's this, right? I forget if that's from the movie or the anime. But actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, what is he even referring to here? If you're only familiar with Naruto, you don't know who this character Momoshiki is, which I didn't a year ago. I didn't pay attention to Boruto at all. You might be curious as to what this fucking novel is, like who the fuck is this guy in the background? Very, very brief overview. So at the very end of Naruto, right? The manga ends on chapter 700. After that, there's a movie that comes out that's chronologically right after. That's called, well, I think first we get the last, but then right after that, we get a movie called Boruto Naruto the movie, right? Now, conveniently, Boruto Naruto the movie, along with every other Naruto movie, has been uploaded to YouTube on the official YouTube channel for free. You can now go watch this whole movie for free. I believe it's in Japanese with English subtitles. So now there is nothing stopping anybody from watching this if you want to. It's just over 2 hours long. It's a fun romp, and basically it covers it bridges the gap between Naruto, the end of Naruto, and the beginning of Boruto. Now, it is basically the same shit that gets covered in chapters 1 through 8 of Boruto manga, and the anime is a little bit weirder. I think there's a whole bunch of preamble in the anime that yeah, I'm jumping back and forth through time with the power of YouTube. There's a fucking this is really funny actually. There's a fuck, I'm so bad at keeping my train of thought. So sorry. The chapters 1 through 6, 1 through 8 or so of the Boruto novel, or of the fucking Boruto manga, cover the same stuff. In the anime, by the time we get to the conclusion of the Momoshiki stuff, which concludes by the end of the 2-hour movie, and by the end of chapter 8 in the novel, we are at chapter 65. So there's obviously a lot of additional shit that happens. Like the first 15 episodes or so of the anime are the Nue arc or whatever it's called. Toneri's there, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on with the village being attacked by Nue and Sumire and all that stuff. So it takes a long time to get here, in the anime. But basically from episode, I want to say like 50-ish to 65, and specifically from 63 to 66, it covers the Momoshiki stuff directly. So it's basically the same content. But just so you know, the movie came out first, as I think Acolyte pointed out to me in a previous stream. Maybe it was FOD. Somebody pointed it out to me. The movie came out first. And then along with the movie came a novelization, an adaptation, right? And it was basically just like the novel version of the movie. Then came out the manga. And then based on the manga, there was also an anime adaptation. So to recap, movie came along with a companion novel. then the manga came out, and then the anime came out. Now, if I were building a case for Momoshiki being universal, my approach would be, okay, well, we have 4 versions of the story, essentially. If I'm going to use one particular version of the story to build my case as a source of evidence, I want to know whether or not the version I'm using is authoritative. I want to know whether or not it is actually representative and if it's like the correct one to use. In other words, if there's contradictions, if there's differences, if there's like, retcons or whatever between the different stories, then I want to understand what those differences are so that I can factor that into my analysis. Now, usually the anime is supposed to be just like a moving adaptation of the static images in the on panel, but we all know that movie, TV, anime adaptations of static source material can be wildly different, and not just in terms of like feats or whatever, but in terms of emotional tone and storytelling. So my pain is far greater than yours. This is a perfect example, right? I think I saw this the other day, right? So in the in the Naruto anime, there's a scene where Pain says, "My pain is far greater than yours." In the manga, he also says, "My pain is still far greater than yours." But obviously, the tone, the theme, the emotional content, and what is happening in the scene are very, very different. So if you want to talk about what is the canon representation of Pain, what is going through his head, what is like, how are his emotions being portrayed, and what does his statement say and reveal about his character? These are essentially 2 different characters. This character is based on that one, but it's a very different representation. Now, obviously, this is an exaggeration, this is a silly example, but my point is that if we go into Universal Naruto, this is the version of, or into Boruto the movie, this is the version of the of Momoshiki that most people will recognize. This is specifically, this is a version of fused Momoshiki. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Momoshiki normally looks kind of like this. He kind of looks like Kaguya. He's just like pale skinned and has like Rinnegan style eyes and all that. But later on, he fuses with another character called Kinshiki, and he starts to look like this, right? He's got the tattoos over his body. Let me show you what he looks like from the manga, because this is how he looks like initially, right? He's like kind of I don't know, demure and silky and fragile, I guess you could say, and like boyish, petite, I don't know. And here's Kinshiki in the background. Obviously he's like tougher and bulkier and stuff like that. And then when Momoshiki fuses with Kinshiki later, spoilers, he winds up looking like this, right? He's got like tattoos all over his body, or they look like tattoos. They're like, I guess more like karma markings or something like that. So this is the version of Momoshiki that most people recognize. This is what people think of when they think of fused Momoshiki as having this particular appearance. If you want to look at how he originally looked, though, in the actual movie, right, the movie that came out first, his initial depiction, he looked like this. Okay? I have to tab through because I will get copyright struck if I play this. Believe me, I've tried. This is what he looks like in his initial like incarnation. He looks like a big red kind of demon kind of guy. So you might look at this and say, okay, well, this is just a retcon. This is just a minor change or whatever. But obviously, if I asked you, like, what is the definitive canon actual version of Momoshiki? And how are we going to scale Momoshiki? How are we going to depict Momoshiki? What imagery are we going to use to represent fused Momoshiki specifically in this part of the fight? Well, you have a choice. You have a choice between using this version or using this version. And the thing is, this version over here appears in the manga and the anime, doesn't appear in the movie, doesn't appear in the novel. Because the movie came out, had a novel that came along with it, and then since then, they changed some stuff. Since then, they made tweaks, they made adjustments, and the manga and the anime diverged, and they have their own, like, separate interpretations of the events. They change things, they tweak things. So if you're going to try to find an authoritative source on information here, number one, you have to figure out which one you're going to use and why. And personally, I like to start from the manga and then go from the manga to other adaptations because, as the term implies, and they are adaptations of this source material. Now, with the movie, it's a little bit weird because the movie came first in this instance, but Then the manga came along and had a chance to like refine and change and adjust anything that it wanted to, and then the anime adapted off of that. So I think like yes, there are things that are retconned by the manga, but then that becomes, you know, that becomes the continuity. It was retconned, and now this is the continuity. So the manga is still our primary source, even though it wasn't always. And then that means that, okay, you know, we're probably going to go ahead and just discard this portrayal of the character. We're probably going to go ahead and say, you know, this guy had his day in the sun, but this imagery for Momoshiki is no longer being carried forward and used and respected, or reincorporated by the rest of the series. And to that point, in the anime, Momoshiki, when he, I actually don't know if I can get away with showing, I'll try. If the stream goes out for a second, you know why. It's just because of this fucking copyright shit. But just to kind of show you, again, like, in the anime, I can just show a still, I should probably be okay. Momoshiki doesn't look like that. This is what Momoshiki looks like in the anime, right? Same kind of depiction. So this is the version of the character that has been cultivated. Why am I bothering to say all this? Well, because the only evidence that you're going to find for people saying that, we'll talk about this in a second, the only evidence that you're going to find for Momoshiki supposedly being universal or supposedly creating a dimension is from the novel adaptation of the movie. So really think about that. In the movie itself, right, the whole ass movie, there is never one mention whatsoever of Momoshiki creating shit. Like, there's never anybody who says that he created a universe, a dimension, a world, a planet, space, nothing. I just saw your message, Magog. No worries. Enjoy dinner. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. Good luck with everything. And, yeah, take care. Appreciate you. And I'll respond to the rest of the chat in a second. Just sorry for keeping you guys waiting. Just want to get through this point. But basically, yeah. So in the movie, there's no mention of this whatsoever. In the manga, if you go through the manga, there's no mention whatsoever of Momoshiki creating a space or a universe or a planet or a realm or a dimension or any other fucking word you can think of. In the anime, there is no mention whatsoever of Momoshiki creating a dimension or a planet or a universe or anything. There is something that is very, very, very vaguely, very loosely, very tangentially similar, which is something that is brought up here, or here in Key's video. This frame over here has Momoshiki saying, how does it feel to be nourishing this nursery that I created? Okay, I don't know, this might surprise some of you. I'm going to be sarcastic for a second here. Nursery is not the same thing as a universe, right? The term nursery or seedbed, I see it being listed as seedbed by certain translations, is different from universe. And the reason this is being referred to as a nursery is because, you know, it's a place, as we can see, where Momoshiki has planted a tree, like, you know, an actual nursery. This is a place where Momoshiki has brought Naruto to drain his chakra. He is draining his chakra to feed the nursery that he created. He didn't say that he created the planet. He didn't say that he created the universe or anything like that. What he created was this nursery, was this space for the trees to be planted. Now, I can already hear the counter argument, because I've already been on the receiving end of it. But why can't the nursery just be the universe? Why can't he be saying nursery, but referring to an entire universe that he created? Well, it can't be because there's no direct evidence that actually supports that interpretation. There is evidence that supports the idea that the Otsutsuki go from planet to planet planting the seeds of the Ten-Tails, and that they grow and that they drain the chakra from those planets. That is a very consistent, very well-established, very thoroughly documented phenomenon that's brought up time and time and time again in multiple media. Not just once in a fucking spin-off novel, but it's brought up over and over again in multiple forms of media. There is no mention whatsoever of Momoshiki having to create an entire fucking universe filled with quintillions of black holes and planets and stars that just sit there doing nothing, just so that maybe some of them, maybe one of them even, can have life on it, so then he can go into that parallel universe, drain the chakra from that one planet, or those very, very few planets, and then, you know, just go there when he needs to drain. No, there's nothing like that whatsoever. It's much more consistent that when he says nursery, he means his fucking nursery, which means where he's planting his goddamn trees, okay? It's very, very, very simple. And this is, again, I challenge anybody to go through the anime and the manga and the movie and actually find a clear cut, like crystal clear, direct, non vague example of any of these characters talking about creating a space. I'll tell you this, they do talk about Kaguya spaces extensively. They go to multiples of Kaguya spaces in the anime and in the manga. They visit them and they refer to them as Kaguya's dimensions. They visit at least one other planet. They don't refer to that planet as something anybody created. It's just a planet that they've drained, right? They talk about the Daikokuten, which is fucking Ishiki's dimension. And they say that, I think he says that he created it, or the Daikokuten gives him access to it or whatever. He talks about how he has control over that dimension where time does not flow. So they mention other dimensions. They take, Naruto gets taken to that place where Boro has him in that kettle urn thing or whatever, and then when Ishiki fights Boruto and Sasuke and Naruto and Kurama and all that, they go to another place. They go to other places through space-time ninjutsu that might be other dimensions or might be other planets. So they have had 238 some odd episodes of the anime. They've had 80 chapters of original Boruto, 20 chapters of the sequel to Blue Vortex, 28, excuse me, to mention, like they've had that much time, that many opportunities to mention any of these characters creating universes, creating dimensions, creating spaces. Never once has Momoshiki gotten a clear-cut statement to that effect, whereas other characters have gotten those statements over and over and over and over again. Okay, so if you really want to get Momoshiki to Universal, you can try to start with Nursery and see where that takes you. But if you go a little further in the anime as well, I have to be very careful about not getting copyright struck here. But basically, let's see if I can just slowly advance. Okay, so this is also really interesting what Kinshiki says here. He says to Naruto, that divine tree was created from one like you, and winds up, being revealed that he's talking about Killer Bee, who harbored a beast, right? And then Naruto, I don't know if it'll play, but he says like Bee-san or something like that. And then Momoshiki says, in a short while, you'll become a divine tree too. And feel free to check out this scene, episode 64, 5 minutes in. So what is happening in this scene is that Momoshiki and Kinshiki have, well, in the novel it suggested that he survived, but in the anime it suggested that they killed Killer Bee, and they took Gyuki, and they drained his chakra, and they planted that as a seed. As a tree for this divine, as a seed for the divine tree. So this tree that they have here is actually basically Killer Bee / Gyuki has been turned into this tree. And they're going to do the same thing with Naruto by draining his chakra. It's a little confusing. It's a little unclear as to how exactly they're doing that, but that's what they're saying. Okay. Does that happen in the manga? Does that happen in the movie? Does that happen in the novel? We'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, when you see Momoshiki or the characters on planets with lots of trees, the explanation that we're getting from the anime is that the trees correspond to either individual people or planets, large sources of chakra that have been gathered in one location, accumulated, drained, and then turned into chakra fruits. So that's part of their whole cycle of gestation, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so all of this is just to establish that from 3 out of 4 versions of the story, we have no evidence for Universal Naruto, no evidence for Universal Momoshiki, rather. And now we're going to talk about whether or not we should even bother using the novel in the first place. We'll talk about these translations. We'll talk about how the novel compares to the other versions of the story and why we shouldn't consider the novel to be authoritative in the first place. Let me check chat real quick, though, because I've been fucking ranting for a while now. Dr. Strangle says, I love that frame of the anime. Yeah, it's so good. I actually used to, unironically really love that depiction. But over time, I realized that it was pretty contrary to Payne's character. Let me bump up the music a little bit, too. There we go. I really don't like the way that it kind of changes our perspective of the character. Gotta love the things in the Game of Thrones show that are terrible, but GRRM confirmed to be true. Oh, no, he actually, retroactively validated them. That's disappointing. Larry says, adaptations can be different even in storytelling. Me looking at Game of Thrones and the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, me looking at Lord of the Rings, me looking at, pretty much everything, right? That's the thing. It's really hard. Even Berserk, I love the anime of sorry, let me be very, 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 very clear. When I say that I love the Berserk anime, I mean the original 1997, not the fucking 2016 abomination. Okay, just to be clear. And the Golden Age arc movies are like pretty good as well. But the original anime, it's great, it's faithful, it's still an adaptation. It still doesn't quite capture the overall feel. Some things change quite significantly. I mean, the overall feel, sure, but there's definitely scenes that play out differently. There's things that are omitted. I think like Puck is just excluded from it entirely, and the way that the art is represented is different. You get a bit of a different feel from sitting with the manga in your hand and just soaking in on these like extremely incredibly detailed stills. I just draw you in and make you focus on an emotion for an extended period of time. When things are moving at a faster pace in the anime, it just doesn't feel the same to engage with it. You can't escape that, like, when you change medium, there is going to be some things that are, if not lost, then like very significantly warped and distorted, and that's okay, right? It's part of the challenge. It's part of the fun of trying to figure out how to translate something into a different format. But you have to be aware of those changes, and if you're going to like speak as though one of them is an authoritative version over the other, then like you should look at both of them. For example, if I wanted to describe to you what is the character of Queen Calanthe from The Witcher, Queen Calanthe in the show and Queen Calanthe in the books are two very different characters, right? They have a lot of similarities, but they act very differently, and they have different roles in the stories. So what is the true Queen Calanthe? Well, really, I could just be glib and say, it's the one from the book because that was the OG. Or I could say, oh, it's the one from the show because that's more recent and it's retconning. But to give you the full picture, what I should do, especially if it's my goal to educate you on The Witcher, is I should talk about both versions and their inherent merits, and which one I think captures the original intention of the story better and why. That's much more interesting at the very least, right? It contributes more to the conversation. Magog headed out, no problem. Oh yeah, Dr. Strangle, the planet is called the Seedbed. I think I actually have a translation that you gave me before that I wanted to share earlier. Let me see if I can find that real quick, because if so, I can just show it here. I think so. Let me try. Can I just do that? Yeah. So sorry this is like formatted crappily, but I think this is something that you shared with me back in Sage's server, and this is a translation that you provided for the novel equivalent of that scene. And this is what he said, Momoshiki said, "From the beginning, this planet has been our Otsutsuki seedbed. Now the time has come to devour all the chakras. Indeed, he had the form of a monster, having consumed the soul of his father. He could no longer be in any form but a demon." This is talking about when he absorbs Momoshiki. A demon, surpassing man, eating devil. Momoshiki, now an inhuman sorcerer, began to absorb the chakra of the surroundings, right? And so this is also talking about like the Rinnegan stream stuff, but I think you helped explain the seedbed and provided some of the context for that. And then maybe it was Hobbs that talked about World of the Living. Let's see. This is Hobby Horse / Hobbs who did this one. And is there another one that I was trying to find? Assembling, building, alternate dimension. Yeah, so I'm trying to find the specific one. Maybe it was Anime Drip, Pocket Dimension, Ikukan. Yeah, so this is slightly different, but yeah, I want to shout you out again and say thank you for helping me like understand this and break this all down. Super, super helpful. The 3 or 4 people in that channel that helped provide translations for that, you guys helped me understand it so much better. I'm still like quite grateful for the hard work that you did there. So thanks again for that. And I'll talk about this more in a little bit. But yeah, seedbed. The seedbed, or the garden, or the seed plot, I think is, I saw one translation of seed plot, or nursery, right? They all basically mean the same thing. It's like, this is a place where things are placed in to be grown and raised. That doesn't mean that they, like, seriously, like, think about that. Like, Momoshiki, his whole thing is that, like, he doesn't even really use jutsu for the most part himself because he runs out of ammo so quickly. His whole thing is he absorbs jutsu from other people, and then he consumes chakra pills which he absorbed from other people, and then he combines them and amplifies the incoming jutsu outward. So he would need to have found somebody else that was capable of creating like a partial universal feat type thing, or ability, and then he would have had to have like consumed more chakra fruit or something like that to be able to, because like he doesn't, as far as we know, he doesn't have a jutsu that like lets him do that. We never see that. It's never listed anywhere, right? Not to do like an argument from ignorance, but what is he doing that actually lets him create universes when it's made extremely clear that he doesn't really like use jutsu on his own without absorbing things from other people? Yeah, he can summon the golem, and yeah, he can summon like a firebird. That's pretty much all he does. He has chakra rods, right? And he's a taijutsu user, but he doesn't have like a vast arsenal of jutsu that he uses. Certainly never mentions any kind of like creation power or anything like that. So it's much better established that he needs to take energy from others to be able to do this. So then comes the question, that's like, one second. Like Choji, right? When Choji takes the red soldier pill, if he takes that red pill and then he is mountain level, does that, like, how do we actually break that down? Is it fair to say that Choji himself, like, in base is mountain level, and if Naruto, like, fights him, that Naruto's mountain level too? Or is it that there is a mountain level of chakra packed in to that pill, and then that temporarily infuses Choji? So, I don't know. You have to kind of break that down and figure out how much the pills are contributing. To skip ahead a little bit, Dr. Strangle says, read the end bit of my translation. The seed bed is the constructed part of the constructed world. Okay, let me see. Extremely, it starts to leak out from the outside of his constructed parallel world. Sasuke's Rinnegan reads the flow. The meaning, there is no more than one. That guy can't be. Indeed, the chakra of the planet's surroundings will indiscriminately be consumed entirely. Right, okay, so I think that's fair, right? And I think this is part of the translation that comes up in something like this, right? He was, the other people have translated this as, he was even draining the chakra that was beyond the parallel dimension he'd made. So, if you want to, this is like the one actual piece of evidence that people really use for, well, let me rephrase that. I mentioned before that there's no specific mentioning of Momoshiki creating a dimension or universe or anything like that in the 3 other forms of the story. There is a mention of him creating a parallel dimension. That one mention, that one phrase, that one quote comes specifically from the novel, and it's this. And the way that this person translated it as the parallel dimension he made, and then the way that you're translating it is as his constructed parallel world. So if we are to take this statement literally at face value, if we accept that this is an authoritative, accurate representation of what Momoshiki does, then yeah, then we could say that Momoshiki constructed or built or spawned or created a parallel world, right? So you translated it as world, and this person translated it as dimension. That doesn't mean universe, right? There's nothing in there that says he created a universe, and even if it was a universe, there's nothing in there that scales to our universe. So at best, if we do take this novel feed, and we do accept that this is 100% true and ironclad and everything, at best, Momoshiki created some space of some size that had a planet and some stars in it. We don't know what the size of the planet is, because at least I have never seen it calced. We don't know what the size of those stars are, or how energetically potent they are, because I've never seen them calced in terms of size or energy output. So all we know is that Momoshiki created some space of some size. Key in his video is claiming that because there's life on it, then the universe must be very rare, must be very vast, because life is rare. But again, we don't know anything about how Momoshiki created the planets, about the properties of that, created that universe, how big it actually is. That's just speculation, right? It's speculation based on how our universe, our real universe, happens to be. We don't know what fucking Momoshiki did to his universe. Maybe it's like a fraction of the size, maybe it's a bajillion times bigger. Maybe every single planet in Momoshiki's universe is teeming with life. Maybe he created it just for the purpose of, like, harvesting, like, little critters on that he can then suck the life out of later. You know, like, maybe he specifically wanted his universe to have more life in it. We don't have any information, we don't have any details whatsoever, so we can't just assume that it's analogous to our universe for scaling purposes. Yeah, so I think we talked about this in Sage's server as well, and my headcanon coming out of this, like the way I interpreted this, is that Momoshiki found a planet somewhere and that he drained the planet, and then he goes back to this planet to drain other people when he just needs like an isolated space to drain their chakra from. And so he turned the planet into an actual seedbed or a garden or something like that. That was his act of construction. He didn't literally make the entire space. His act of making was turning the planet into a seedbed. That's the thing that he built. That's the thing that he constructed. And I think that's what you're saying. The, the constructed part of the constructed world. If you want to, not just you, Acolyte, like the people in general, if you really want to interpret the statement as he created a planet or he created a dimension, okay, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. But understand that that has nothing to do with the power scaling definition of universal, right? Completely fucking unrelated. Nothing to do with that, because we have no evidence whatsoever to scale this space to a universal sized space that's equivalent to our own or analogous to our own. Okay, so that all being said, I don't think we should accept this. I don't think that we should just accept this, little blurb in and of itself, and I'm going to explain why in the next section of this video. But let me catch up on chat first. Saria says, honestly, at least it was nothing with Daenerys. It was just Bran and some other stuff, and I'm glad because the character assassination of Daenerys was asinine. Yeah, so I started reading, or like listening to the audiobooks of, just call it reading, Game of Thrones, and I really don't like the reader's performance. It's very ponderous. It's not like, Peter Kenny, I think, is the guy who did the performances for The Witcher, and he kind of ruined other audiobooks for me because he gives every single character a unique voice, and he's so expressive and poetic with the way that he renders them. And now I cannot abide by the whatchamacallit. I can't deal with the sort of just straight up, I'm going to do a bad job here, but whatever. Like, if I pick up an audiobook and the audiobook goes, Momoshiki, who had passed from being an ogre into a comrade-eating fiend and transformed into an inhumane demon, I can't deal with that. It has to be Momoshiki, who had passed from being an ogre into a comrade-eating fiend and transformed into it. Like, I need that kind of animatedness. And that's all fucking Peter Kenny's fault. So I got like 3 or 4 hours in to the Game of Thrones audiobooks, and I just can't do it. I need to find a better reading of it. I wonder if they have like an audio drama version. No, I should get it unabridged. I just gotta find a better version, or I gotta sit down like a adult and actually read the fucking book with my eyes. But ain't nobody got time for that, right? So let's see. Dr. Strangle says, you said you're never gonna forgive them. That's fair. Dr. Strangle says, you didn't hear that GRM confirmed that all the stuff with Daenerys, capitalized, is accurate, and he has only been pretending to be a complex character writer for the last 40 years. Honestly, that wouldn't surprise me. But, no, it would, because the funny thing is that, like, there's so much, I think I mentioned this before, that even in the first chapters, there's so much detail that gets packed into, like, little descriptions of things like a character wearing a glove and how cold the glove was when it caressed somebody else's face, and that being contrasted with like a warm splash of blood. And it's like he can convey like such vivid scenes and like characterize characters very well, very succinctly, which is really, really hard to do. So I don't know, I think that he does have a lot of depth and consideration to his characters. It just seems like that some of that was lost. I wonder if he's just like trying to be diplomatic, But I don't want to speak for the guy. I don't really know him. I will say that I saw his video on like, I've been, I don't want to get into this. I have been maybe less than impressed on his response to some critiques of like potential sexism or racism in his books. I don't think he's a sexist. I don't think he's a racist. I do think that fantasy often relies on certain tropes that are just kind of baked into us. For example, how many fantasy settings and universes have the evil people being like dirty, unwashed hobos, essentially, that are a primitive society that kind of like gibber and twitter and make animal noises, that have very crude, like poorly fashioned weapons, and oftentimes have very dark skin, live in the mud, or just like dirty, like I already said before. And basically what they want to do, their goal, right, their what they want to accomplish is just to overwhelm society and civilization and just destroy things and rend and tear and break. Like that's such a common trope. And then who are the good guys? Well, the good guys are the people who usually speak English in a refined tone, in like received pronunciation. They usually lived in a more advanced society. They usually have a more beautiful culture, and it's like the perfect example is the Skaven versus the High Elves. Not that the High Elves are like good like there's plenty of like evil people within that race, but at the same time, the using Warhammer as an example, like the race of men and High Elves versus like the Skaven and the Orcs is a perfect example of that. And like the like Rohan and Gondor versus fucking the Orcs and the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. And you have to wonder after a while, like how come our fantasy so often involves, and like how come like orcish type characters and like goblin type characters always have like essentially working class British accents, right? Like the Cockney accent is not really associated with refined academia, right? It's kind of associated more with like a I guess like a more like blue collar is the term for it, working class, like lower economic class sort of caste or whatever, sort of like a economic bracket. I don't know what the right term for it is, right? Whereas the highly refined and highly precise received pronunciation is more associated with like scholarly, high society, more wealth, more education, stuff like that. So why is it that all the villains are like gross and stinky and unwashed and have terrible technology and are brutish and impish and they just want to break and destroy things and they don't talk real good, but all the good guys are like shiny and crisp and clean and do have like better technology and do talk real good and are better educated and have better religions? It's, it's just I don't think that the people who made Warhammer or even Tolkien were racists by any means, but I do think that like there is a part of our storytelling tropes that tends to try to like we are scared of people who look different than us and have different religions and who we think smell bad, and we are scared of them coming to our place and taking all of our things and breaking all of our things, and we feel really, really good about the idea of defending against the tides of those like stinky, smelly people coming and taking our stuff. Thankfully, we've all matured beyond those like horribly regressive bullshit ideas, right? Thankfully, our country, especially in America, the greatest country in the entire world, right, has evolved beyond that, and we don't see each other that way anymore. And this isn't relevant anymore, right? So I'm so sad. But yeah, I think I was just kind of disappointed by how he responded to that topic. And so I kind of stopped wanting to learn more about him as a person. I would much rather just engage with his art, and this can be the one time I let myself get away with, art separating from the artist. I don't want Game of Thrones ruined for me. Fuck. Like, D&D already tried as hard as they possibly could. I'm not letting them win. I'm not even letting Martin win. Anyway, didn't retroactively change anything. John, he just gave D&D 3 things for the ending and they made up the... Oh, okay, gotcha. So that's not as bad as I thought. Sorry says, like, even John is dead in the book still. Oh, okay, and when he comes back, he'll actually be less of himself. Yeah, I was listening to an analysis on, like, the real Jon Snow or something like that. I think that mentioned that the channel's Alt Swift X, if I recall correctly. And I'm really... the depictions of other characters being changed and being very different when they come back from death, that had so much more impact. Like, John really didn't change that much in the show after he literally fucking died, and I think that's kind of a big missed opportunity, right? Dr. Strangle says, I think this is the equivalent of throwing 2 seeds on the ground and saying, I constructed this farm. I don't even think this is supposed to indicate the constructed the planet itself. Yes, 100%. Yeah, I prefer that interpretation. I think that's much more consistent with everything else we see, and I appreciate where you're coming from there for sure. Sorry it took me like fucking a half an hour to get to that. Sorry, I said, just want to point out that parallel world and parallel dimension do mean alternate realities or universes, so I didn't think the word universe needs to be there, but I get it. Yeah, so I think, sorry, this is something that you and I have like gently disagreed on in the past, in that, let me try to clarify it, that in terms of fiction overall, right? and especially multiple different authors and multiple different. I'm trying not to like fucking mansplain here or whatever. I'm just trying to like share my perspective. But like the way that I see things is that you will often see the concepts of the terms parallel world, parallel universe, parallel reality, alternate world, etc., kind of used interchangeably. And sometimes, often, like with the isekai setting, which I think, like, technically Narnia kind of counts as like an isekai, right? Like, Narnia is a whole universe, right? It's like its whole other alternate place that you can just like step into. And it's implied that they have stars and galaxies, if I remember correctly, and all that shit, right? So we don't know for a fact that it's like identical to ours by any means. It could be smaller, it could be vaster, but it's kind of implied that at a baseline, it's like another universe. But obviously Orochimaru using the term universe to describe his parallel space, or fucking what's his name, Obito, like making, let's say he made his Kamui dimension, right? That could get termed an alternate space or an alternate reality. That doesn't mean that that space is equivalent in terms of quote-unquote power, for lack of a better word, to Narnia. And so I think I agree with what you're saying, that it is totally fine in general to refer to any of these spaces by any number of different terms that get shared between different like sci-fi properties, or even within like the broader sphere of fantasy literature, fantasy art. My only objection is that people in the power scaling community have a very specific definition of what universal means and parallel universe means, and they feel compelled, I think, to take that as like a label or a sticker and just put it on things and try to conform the pieces of art that they are consuming to this very specific definition. So if you look at like the world of Road to Ninja that we talked about ad nauseum at this point, if you want to, I want to call that a parallel universe, feel free. I'm not gonna like be bothering you about that. If you want to call it a parallel world, a parallel reality, that's okay. Like, I don't think that you are wrong, especially as just like a human being who consumes media. If you then try to say that because you've chosen, if you do like the power scalar worm tactic of being like, well, we are calling this a parallel universe, and the term universe means universal, and that means that we can just assume that specifically the Road to Ninjaverse has a quintillion black holes, and then Obito outputted that energy, then it's, you see the problem with that, right? It's like, it's not about how normal, well-adjusted human beings use words. It's about how, like, we try to force our jargon into the sphere of other things where it doesn't belong, right? So, that being said, Dr. Sang says typos. Typos? I'm not sure which typos. Dr. Strangle said, of what I read, GRM doesn't really do that in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, Dothraki are clearly meant to be Mongolians, less a Mongol Empire. Doesn't really moralize about them. Jason Momoa was really hot. Yeah, you're getting no arguments from from me on that. I was once told that I looked like Jason Momoa, and I think that person was being very generous, and I would not repeat that for myself. I wouldn't be quite so self-aggrandizing as to parrot that ever, but I do admit that at the time, like, I did have a little like squeal of glee, like, oh wow, such to be compared to such an individual. It's a very, very high praise for sure. Dr. Strangle says, like, oh yeah, I read that. Sorry, says, oh yes, I agree. I think you should take it in context, but I'm just saying I understand why you can reach that conclusion if you just see the words parallel dimension or parallel worlds universe. Meh. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think, like, for any random person picking up a book and just reading it like this, they would be totally understood. I don't even want to say forgiven, because it's not even like a mistake per se. They would be totally justified in coming to that conclusion. The problem only comes in when people try to twist it and co-opt it for like these power scaling agendas, really genuinely. So, that being said, a second, it's gonna stretch. So, guess my perspective on all this is that I don't feel the need to, like, if there are 4 different versions of the story and we only really get like 1 or 2 sentences from one version of the story, to me that's an outlier. And I don't think that that needs to be the thing that colors our perspective. I think this is what Sage would call like an absence of evidence argument, right? If the authors wanted to depict Momoshiki as universal, they've had a decade to do it. They've had 4 different mediums to do it. And the only evidence that they've given us is one, like, wayward fucking stray comment in a spin-off of a movie that's been retconned. And, like, if you have to go that fucking far out of your way to try to get Momoshiki to this level, that in and of itself is like a self-report. That in and of itself is an admission that we just don't have any real strong evidence from the manga or from the anime or from the movie itself. Because if we did, that's what we would be using. So to me, it's like, if Momoshiki is actually universal, we would have a better argument than this. Now, that doesn't mean that that's like proof of anything, right? It doesn't mean that like that ends the conversation. We can still look at this, we can examine it, but how likely is it that this is the correct way to look at the series overall if we don't find any other corroborating evidence? And does it make more sense? Is it more fair to just treat this as an outlier? Well, I want to be fair. I don't want to just say, well, I don't like this, I prefer the other versions of the story, so let's just dismiss this. But in order to be fair, I think we need to try to evaluate whether or not we should consider the novel to be authoritative, and whether we should say, yes, the novel itself has the right for this statement to exist and to be taken at face value. So how do we do that? We do it the same way that we would evaluate the data books in our discussions of Lightspeed Naruto and stuff. We read it, and so that's what I did. I read the novel a couple of times, and I specifically took notes of things that I thought were interesting. I want to share some of those things with you now, and then I want to compare what we learned there to the other depictions and other versions of the story. And based on all that, I'd like us to just ask the question, does the novel feel like a reliable, reasonably authoritative source for us to be scaling Momoshiki off of based on our findings? Okay? Obviously, I don't think so. I'll be straightforward, but I want to show you why. I don't want you to feel like you have to take anybody's word for it, including myself. Okay? Saria says the Undertale drama is crazy. What the fuck is going on with Undertale? Like, what the fuck? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that Undertale's a pretty chill game. Saria says the media literacy is refreshing. If the author wanted this, why haven't they done anything with it? Yes, exactly. Let's ask why the author hasn't done more with the situation. Yeah, exactly. Like, look, I like the idea of there being, like, I'm a Dark Souls nerd, and like all of Dark Souls is filled with like mysteries on mysteries, and things are left deliberately like opaque so that people argue about it and pore over it and come up with their own interpretations. It's specifically constructed that way. But also, like, and so I like that. I like searching for the little hidden breadcrumbs and trying to find greater meaning from it. But there are limits to that, and you have to wonder, like, okay, a work of art is at least many times an act of communication between a creator and an audience member. What we should try to understand what the fuck the author is trying to tell us. And given that this is a manga for children, you know, older children, but still children, usually the author is pretty fucking clear when they want us to understand something. They want us to understand that Naruto and Kurama are making a new form of chakra. They explain, very briefly, but they explain nuclear fusion, and they explain what the fuck a baryon is, right? They want us to understand how characters, like, lose equilibrium when they get hit with sound jutsu. They literally show us a scientific diagram, like a cross-section, like, biology textbook diagram of the inner ear, and explain, like, how your vestibular system works, right? They want us to understand how Kimimaro manages to generate bones and shit. They specifically use the term osteoblast and osteoclast. Now, obviously, it's a fictionalized, exaggerated version, but when they want us to understand something about a character, they give us, like, consistently clear and precise details, especially when talking about their powers, their abilities, their functionality. And like, think of all the detail that goes into just explaining like Lee using drunken boxing or something like that, or like Kimimara's abilities which only show up for a few chapters and then never come back again. Like Momoshiki is like one of the most significant agents in the story, and he's part of the race of people that are driving like the main antagonists of this current arc of the story. And again, they had like a decade to elaborate on this, and they just haven't. So unless there's going to be some big fucking reveal, we can get to that if it ever comes. But right now, based on the data we have, it's just not consistent with Kishimoto or Ikemoto's way of telling stories and explaining things. If you want to speculate that that might change in the future, that's fine. But right now, we ain't got shit to go off of. Strangle says, Sari's opponent, I mostly agree how easy the conflation is, but even the most simple understanding of semiotics and the signed and signified distinction would clear that up. I admit I'm not familiar with those terms, but I'm very intrigued now to learn more about that. Saria says, why is Rasengan powered by the planet so impressive if Momoshiki is fused with Boruto? Why? Yeah, that's a good point. Shit, I had a note about this. One second, let me look. Movie version. Yeah, so let's look at this 1 second. Is it... Fuck, I have to keep track of the 4 fucking different versions of this. I think it's in episode 65. Okay. 1330. So this is towards the end of the fight, right? Like, I think Boruto is about to use his Rasengan on Momoshiki over here, and he gets it together, right? And he gets it, yeah, he gets his little vanishing Rasengan. He starts to throw it at Momoshiki. Momoshiki's like, I'll absorb that, but then it disappears. And then we see, I think it shows it here. Please don't sue me. I'll try that. Okay, it's hard to find the exact frame. Yeah, okay, here we go. So this is the vanishing that Rasengan that Boruto used. The last time we saw it, this is how strong it was, right? It didn't even get through a tree. Granted, this is like the first time he used it, but this is, I don't know, like a couple of days ago. Right? So now he's fighting fused Momoshiki, right? And he hits him with this jutsu. And fused Momoshiki, who's taking hits from Boruto era Sasuke and Naruto and fighting on par with them, both of them simultaneously, gets hit by this little kid's baby Rasengan, and this is what happens. It hits him in the face, and it which is one of the greatest panels in the anime, hits him in the face and knocks him over like this. And then afterwards, he's like writhing around on the ground and like convulsing, and he's like fucking panting, and he's like all pissed, and you know, like this is what happens to him after that, right? Now, obviously, he's probably taken some damage from the fight beforehand, because this is pretty late in the fight, but this is what winds up being the tipping point. So this character, who supposedly is universal, has universal levels of chakra flowing through him, a little kid hits him with the Rasengan that was just a couple of days ago, only not even able to get through a tree. So did fucking Boruto go from tree level to universe level in a week from training with Sasuke and going through the Chunin exams? Make it a month. Fuck it. Make it a decade. Like, there's no fucking way, right? It just doesn't make sense. Okay, well, Momoshiki just has universal AP, but he has like shit durability. Okay, fine. But that's just one more metric, like one more tally on the this character doesn't scale that high. Like we've ruled that out now. Universal durability is off the table for this guy because he got his ass kicked by a child's, like, what is he, 10, 12-year-olds, like little baby, my first Rasengan. So I don't know. No, but it's my misunderstanding. It's my misunderstanding, right? That Rasengan is actually universal. I'm sorry, my bad. All these characters scale to universal, so the Rasengan is universal too. Fuck that. I'm not getting in on that. And Saria as well. Like that's the thing about the Uzuhika Rasengan. I thought that what Kashin Koji was saying about that and what Boruto was saying is that it was. Or actually, let me rephrase. People look at the fact that the Rasengan Uzuhiko, the one that relies on the planet's rotation in TBV, that because it's using the planet, it is planetary, and therefore it is a planetary level attack, right? but just incorporating some of the rotational, like, velocity or power or whatever of the planet into the attack doesn't mean that the attack then has the power to blow the entire fucking planet apart. But even if it does, think about it this way. Boruto in TBV fighting against Jura, like probably the strongest character that we've ever seen in the series, right? Or even like fighting against Ishiki or whatever, is using an ability that is like his strongest ability, he being one of the strongest characters in the series, fighting against the strongest enemies in the series, that's incorporating the very power of the planet itself, and he's able to significantly damage, at least inconvenience, harm, hurt, whatever, and affect these people on this level with an attack that is only incorporating a portion, like a tiny portion of the overall, like, strength, so to speak, of the Earth. So to me, like, that's really all you need to debunk all this, right? Like, late stage late stage Boruto protagonist, ultimate ability against the strongest characters is only using a part of the planet's power, and it's able to surpass their durability and damage them, right? So, like, I'm sorry, how is Boruto getting to Universal from incorporating planetary rotation? Please, somebody please explain that to me. I will pay you if you can convince me of that. Like, I will offer a bounty, legitimately, if you can fucking actually convince me of that. I'll be genuinely impressed. Sorry, says, meanwhile, Grant Morrison requiring everyone to have an orientation merit badge to understand the cosmology of the DC multiverse. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, right? Like, this universe is not that fucking complicated. There's some convolutions to it. There's some weirdness to it. It takes a while to kind of process certain things because of the retcons and the way the story is branched. Mostly, it's just really fucking long. If you're starting from, God forbid if you're watching the whole anime, but if you're starting from Naruto at, like, chapter 1 going through to 700 and then going into TBV, like, you got a lot of shit to cover, but it's not really all that complicated. The power system is not that complicated. The most complicated thing, I think, is maybe some of the Otsutsuki, like, Six Paths abilities, Rinnegan abilities, like, and limitations, stuff like that. Hagoromo was kind of weird explaining some of that, but yeah. Dr. Strangle says, because JoJo's made spin seem like the craziest ability ever. could be some cross-pollination there. Once again, Naruto characters have no durability. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm right there with you. Momoshiki gets his, like, Rinnegan eye thing stabbed by just a kunai. Remember? Like, so at the very least, he has egregious weak spots. But yeah. Saria says, kind of want to rewatch Superman, need hope injected into my veins. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I still haven't watched that, but hey, there's also, I don't know if you're on Reddit much, but there's a Reddit page that I used to go to called iBleach, EYE Bleach, and I know it sounds like aggressive or whatever, but really it's just like, the idea is that you go to that page to kind of clear your vision, to bleach your eyes, so to speak, if you've been having a bad day or you've seen some other content that disturbed you, and it's just like all kinds of pictures of cute animals and stuff. So that's, sometimes I'll just send people pictures from there to cheer them up. I don't know if it'll work for you, but it might be worth checking out. Okay, so Sage and Noodles and Key and a bunch of other people, when they reference Multiversal Naruto, Universal Naruto, you know, they will quote a translation of the manga. 99% of the time, these people just refuse to credit the translator. I don't know why it's so fucking hard. Hey, and this is like, I'm being serious about this. Anybody out there who's watching this, credit your fucking sources. It's not hard. It's not hard to just put a link to the people whose hard work you take and use for your own benefit and profit. Credit your sources. Link to them. Give them some appreciation. Unless they explicitly tell you, don't mention my name or I don't want to be included, that's one thing. If you do the work yourself, that's one thing, obviously. But if you're taking somebody else's work, you fucking credit them. And that applies to Sage, and that applies to Key and Noodles and anybody else. Myself included. If you catch me, like, not giving somebody credit, like, get on my ass. Like, I shouldn't do that. And sometimes it's easy to be lazy. Sometimes you can just honestly forget. But we need to hold each other accountable to this, because the only reason that Key is building this part of his video is because somebody else did hard work, and they deserve the credit for that. So let me start by saying this translation that people tend to use is from this source here, and it's pretty easy to find if you just search the internet for individual passages. Like if you're watching the stream, just pause at any point and just like take a block of text and put it into Google, and you can find this. Or if you contact me and I can send you a PDF. Here's the thing that actually makes this particular version, what can I say? It's awkward to talk about this because you notice that this is a PDF, right? Hang on, I'm gonna get ahead of myself. So, the novelization of the Boruto movie is only available in Japanese. There is no official English translation. As far as I know, there's no official translation in any other languages. It's just Japanese. So, the only translations that are available are fan translations, which is why I said, hey, credit your sources, because if you see a translation of the novel online, it's from a fan. It's somebody who has done work on their own. They deserve credit. This particular translation is done by this particular user, Cactua Sulfura. Sorry, I can't pronounce this. I'll just say like Cactua, right? Is it Kakatua? Okay. The thing is, you'll notice that this URL, right, that's attached to this is you can go to the PDF, you can go to the actual website. I thought so, but the thing is, I think it's down because the original, well, maybe not, maybe it's archived. So the original website, okay, so it is up here. That's good to know. This site here, you might notice that I'm accessing this via the Wayback Machine, which is an internet archive project. This translation was posted on this individual's Tumblr page, and the page no longer exists. So the person who has written this has taken their work down for whatever reason. So I just want to start off by saying that, like, it's kind of weird and maybe a little concerning, maybe a little gross, that we are all still arguing with each other over the work that somebody else has done who is no longer apparently involved in the conversation and who has taken their work down. I sure fucking hope that the reason they took their work down wasn't because, oh, I don't know, a bunch of toxic people started taking their work and starting like bullshit arguments over it. I certainly hope that wasn't the case. I could understand why, you know, somebody who just for fun, as an act of kindness, as an act of contributing to the community, spent hours and hours doing a translation only to have it pilfered and picked over and argued over and spat over and like torn over like a bone on a carcass or something. You know, that might be a little fucking discouraging and they might want to like move away from that. But part of the reason why it's awkward to talk about this is because we are still, and you can see by the blue text in the back, right? Key is still using, it's the same exact text, same exact coloring. Key is just using screenshots from this person's work who has taken their work down. So in essence, we probably shouldn't even be referencing this without asking the permission. I even kind of wonder if I should be talking about this shit like this, right? But since people are still using this particular translation, I'm going to respond to that and ask that people just keep in mind, like, be respectful of the person who made this and the fact that their content is no longer available through the main source, right? You can't go to their website anymore and access it directly because it's not there anymore, and we can only speculate without contacting this person and asking, which, by the way, leave them alone, okay? But we can't like really know without being in that person's head, essentially. So that being said, let's take a look. Since we're all referencing this anyway, let's take a look. And I want to just basically go over some things I noticed. Some of these things are just fun things that I noticed while I was reading through. Some of them aren't even relevant to the argument, but some of them are. And I want to share them with you. First of all, I'm just going to start by going for my notes. Okay, so starting on page 2 of the PDF, there's this kind of fun description of Sasuke that I found. The man's name was Uchiha Sasuke. He was a shinobi whose muscles were like a steel wire that had been forged out of the best steel and then tempered overall. That said, it wasn't pointless sinew. His muscles were practical, in the same way a leopard or lion's would be, with some faint softness of fat remaining. It's a very lovely little description of Sasuke there that I thought was amusing. Okay, so then there's mention of Kaguya's castle, just including that in to mention that there is a direct, mention of them going to Sasuke going to find information about Kaguya and all that. And then let me find this over here. So Sasuke and his comrades had defeated Kaguya. It was because Kaguya had set out to have all shinobi sacrificed to her and to absorb their chakra. It was obvious that they showed no compassion to that sort of clan. There was... Okay, so that's just to establish that the absorption of chakra and like the mission of the Otsutsuki, so to speak. Okay. And then the stuff about the white Zetsu, all that is kind of reinforced here. Okay. So, there is this particular... Yeah, okay. So when Sasuke is exploring the castle and looking for Kaguya, I want to be very careful about this. This person who made this translation put a shitload of effort into it and probably got a load of shit from the community as a result, as people tore away at it. I am not here to put this person's work down or to make fun of them or to discourage them whatsoever. I'm only grateful for the work that they did. In response to people co-opting this work and using it for their own agenda and using it as an authoritative source, let me just point out that some of the language in this translation is a little bit less precise than what you might find from an official translation. That's not slander. That's not me trying to be mean. Sincerely, I am appreciative of this work. But if we are then going to use it as an authoritative source, we have to keep in mind that this particular translator has linguistic quirks that they use, and we should be familiar with their style when trying to figure out how to interpret their work that they're doing. So, for example, there aren't any traces of anyone having lived here for a long time. Looks like it's best to think of it as an abandoned base. He wondered how far they walked. He says that's a little bit of a strange thing to say. What is the they that's being referred to here? Who's walking? Did somebody walk away from the abandoned base? There are little phrases like that that kind of stick out as being a little bit odd, and I want us to just keep an eye out for that as we go. Okay. Now this is interesting, right? We were talking about like using scientific type explanations or context for things. Sasuke makes a Chidori at a certain point, and he says his lightning release took on the form of plasma in his hand, striking against the ions in the atmosphere. The chi-chi-chi sound released almost had the same feeling as the sound crows made. So this is a valuable thing to look at for two reasons. One, get this very interesting description of like specifically the ions in the atmosphere striking together and taking the form of plasma. Really fucking cool. I don't know if that's entirely in line with what we see in the series. I don't know if Sasuke's lightning jutsu is plasma, so this might be a little bit of a creative stretch, a little bit of a creative interpretation, but still pretty cool that they're trying to incorporate a little bit of the science into it. However, this is followed up immediately by this statement. The chi-chi-chi sound released almost had the same feeling as the sound crows made. Okay, I've never heard anybody else describe the sound of a Chidori having the feeling of the sound of a crow. And again, I really want to be careful here. I'm not trying to put down the person who did this translation, but let's just ask ourselves as we're reading this, if we're going to use this to build an argument about Momoshiki, if we're going to use this rather than the other three sources, or as a primary source, it comes with some quirks. It comes with some caveats. This is the nature of the source that we're reading from uses creative interpretations and phrasing like this, and we need to be aware of that, of the nature of the source itself. Okay, and then, as the Otsutsuki show up, right, there is this line, okay? The enemy were ogres. That's why I had a little Shrek picture in the thumbnail. Now, I'm pretty sure that the term here used for ogre is oni, and ogre is one of the ways that oni is translated from Japanese, but obviously an ogre is specifically something that exists in Western mythological canon. and an ogre and an oni are two different things with two different like cultural heritages. So is it really a sign of like precise exact language that we can use at face value without further corroboration to just like, are they related to Shrek? Is what I want to ask you. Again, trying not to be unfair to the translator, but I'm just like, if we're then going to run rampant with this for power scaling, this is the kind of language that's being used here. Okay. And then if we, where is it? Like children's book. Okay. Oh yeah, it's right there. Like something that would come out of a children's book. They were two men with hordes growing out of their heads. It's just sort of a strange interpretation, in my opinion. Okay. Oh, Strangle says, looked up the username and found a Reddit page from 10 years back saying they stepped back for focus on school and life stuff. That's good. Okay, I'm glad that it's not related to any kind of like cyberbullying bullshit. That's reassuring to hear. I'm not familiar with Grant Morrison, but I'll definitely check him out. If you the PDF, okay. Saria says, I love Grant Morrison. He's so goated. His way of mapping out the cosmos is how I went down the path to my master's and said, oh shit, okay, well then I definitely need to check him out. Yeah. He made me love quantum mechanics, physics, and higher energy physics. Fuck. 1 second. He made me love quantum mechanics, physics, and high energy physics and cosmology. Okay, that is great to hear. I'm going to check out this person. Okay, thank you. Dr. Strangle, also they seem to be a prolific shipper, so you might be blaming the wrong toxic community. Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing. I fully understand that the ship communities can be extremely bitter and toxic and argumentative. I had friends who were very deeply involved in Tumblr wars, and yeah, I'm not even touching that shit. Okay, so that being said, I think it's also interesting to note this, right? Like, Kaguya had died in this world. There wasn't such a thing as immortality, except that, you know, Otsutsuki immortality winds up being a huge part of the Boruto and TBV story in the form of karma. So, is this novel the current canonical, like, accurate representation of the verse, or do things wind up getting, like, elaborated on and changed later on? As a quick aside, I did want to mention that I noticed this. When we were talking about the Sharingan before, we have this line here on page 4, where it says, when people are about to move, their muscles will tense slightly in preparation for the movement. Sasuke's eyes never overlooked that source of imminent movement. That was why it was possible for him to move before his opponent did. So this is just like a little aside, you know, but it is true that the stuff we were talking before about the Sharingan, like kinetic predictive vision, is described again as being like analyzing muscle movements and using that for prediction. So it's nice that they threw that in there into the novel. And there's also for this, like, people looking to talk about strengthening muscle with jutsu. It couldn't be thought of as a simple muscle power. It had to be that the giant was strengthening his muscles with some kind of jutsu. That's also potentially useful. This I thought was kind of funny. In the first little arc of the story, Boruto goes on a mission with his comrades, and they wind up chasing a bear. So this is on page 9. The panda bear, who'd been hit in the face right in a place where sensitive nerves were gathered in his eyes and snout, let out a taken-aback shriek and started to run away with the speed of lightning. Okay, so again, I just want to point out that if we this is not a comment negatively on the translator. They didn't do anything wrong here. They're just using metaphor, which I'm sure the original text did as well, okay? But imagine if a power scaler came along and said, okay, well, in the novel, objectively, verbatim stated, pandas move at the speed of lightning, and so children are lightning speed if they can catch up with a panda. What a crock of shit that would be, right? Again, the crock of shit is not coming from the translator. It's coming from people who would look at the translator's work and take it literally out of context and run with it. This is not the appropriate way to interpret this material. And then there's also this. It's probably on the same page, but I'm just going to do this anyway. Oh yeah, here. Piercing a blow through the bear's bulky layers of fat was impossible for humans without increasing their strength with chakra, but when it came to just letting them experience pain, that was certainly possible. So take that as you will, but yeah, I'll just leave that there. Also, 60 kilometers an hour, that's the speed of a running bear. So we have a speed calc for the bear, which directly contradicts the fucking lightning statement from before. So please, for the love of God, if you're gonna quote novels, understand that metaphor exists. And if you need nobody should need like a direct proof of how metaphor works in a children's book. But if you do, here you go. Here is a direct statement of the actual speed of the bear compared with a hyperbolic metaphoric statement. So yeah, lightning speed panda, absolute bliss. Yeah, exactly. No. It's actually we're switching away. Tell Magog that we're switching away from horses per planet to pandas per lightning bolt. That's our new form of measurement. Let's see, what else do I got? I did kind of find it funny that Naruto apparently has to maintain a horrendous caffeine addiction to keep up with his multiple shadow clones. Next to the TV that had been showing the news, there's a mountain of overflowing piles of empty coffee cans and nutrition drink packets. That was the compensation for carrying out the superhuman feat of integrating the consciousness of countless numbers of Kagebunshin and making decisions for each one of them. So it's interesting, the way that the Kagebunshin are described in the novel is that Naruto can actually stay connected consciously to them at a distance, as opposed to, it seems to be more described, I guess actually that is kind of consistent with what we see in the manga, although I always got the impression that it's like once Naruto sends his clone off, he can't like talk to it or communicate to it, depending on the context. But yeah, Naruto has to like keep himself hopped up on stimulants in order to, maintain that, which is kind of funny. And then this Katasuke slander, this is pretty funny too, on page 16. The strained atmosphere was broken by the arrival of Katasuke, the leader of the Scientific Ninja Tool Division. He was the sort of man who wore clothes that wore egghead written all over them, and to make matters worse, a bow necktie. He was someone who stood out amongst the Seventh era. So poor Katasuke just getting some vicious slander here. And then this is stupid. I'll skip that. Sarada breaks a table. Who cares? I also want to point out... No, let's go this. Oh, this was just kind of beautiful, right? Like, there's no, purpose to power scaling for this, but like in chapter 2, page 25, there's this description. I just really liked this writing a lot, so we'll just read it real quick. The hours felt like a dream. His father was here, his mother was here, and his little sister was smiling. Nobody was lonely. Large piping hot chicken taken out from the oven, Himawari's sparkling eyes, confetti scattering everywhere from the crackers, his mother looking like she was having fun for the first time in so long, and his father, who warmly watched over her expression. It would have been nice if this lasted forever, if things could just stay like this, Boruto thought. He wished. Okay, and obviously it changes, but that was such a nice little moment there. I just wanted to share that. But then, of course... this also kind of strikes home, because right after this, we hear his whole body was wrapped in anger. He couldn't forgive him. He couldn't possibly forgive him. His father's love towards his children had been a Kagebunshin's illusion. Something about like love itself being an illusion is really poignant to me. So I really like that. Let's see. Okay. Oh yeah, so this is interesting. Okay, when Boruto starts to throw, when Boruto shows up and tries to get Sasuke to be his mentor, page 33, Sasuke heard the sound of air being sliced, the sound of a shuriken. It was being thrown with top-notch skill, full of intent to be a knockout blow. So it sounds like it was aimed with perfect accuracy towards the artery at the back of Sasuke's neck. So that's kind of a brutal little detail there. Like, Boruto was attacking Sasuke as if he meant to kill. I think we talked about that a little while ago too. Like, going all out and intent to kill aren't necessarily simultaneously or equivalent. But here we have Boruto like doing something that's quite vicious as it's being described here. And it was aimed with perfect accuracy. So Boruto is described pretty consistently in the novel as a bit of a prodigy as well. Yeah, like that was, let's look at this, right? So, to think he hadn't understood the significance of his Rasengan, Sasuke thought that's how frighteningly genius Boruto's talent was. So Boruto is described as being a frighteningly genius level talent. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's definitely something that's in the manga or in the novel. Okay, so now we start to get to more stuff that's more relevant for the power scaling and all that. page 40, this is where Momoshiki and Kinshiki show up and start fucking with Killer Bee, if you want to read through all this. But the part that I wrote down to go over was specifically, in a wasteland, the giant octopus was grappling with two beings. The two beings were ogres. They were the same ogres who Sasuke had grappled with at Kage's castle, so just doubling down on the ogre description. Why were they here in this world? There was only one answer. They were here to carry out what Kage had left unfinished. Okay, just more context for that. Let me see. The divine tree has been cut down and Kage is nowhere to be seen. It looks like the things of this planet have somehow gained some unnecessary intelligence. Okay. There's an interesting thing over here that somebody pointed out on Reddit, which is that in the novel, they actually have Killer Bee escaping from this scene, right? So we return again to the wasteland. One of the destroyed eight tails cut off octopus legs had a single figure crawling out. It was no one but the Jinchuriki Killer Bee himself. Shit, he said. The next guy they're going to target, it's Naruto. So this is kind of weird. Killer Bee does the same shit that he does with Sasuke back when he fights EMS or Taka Sasuke? No, Taka Sasuke. And he gets away with an octopus leg substitution, but then he's aware that Naruto is in danger and that Momoshiki and Kinshiki are going to come for him, but he doesn't like chase after him. And then in the anime, like, they seem to have retconned it. Like he doesn't try to warn Naruto or like even go and warn the Raikage or anything like that, right? We never hear from Killer Bee again. And then in the anime, it seems like they retconned it and there was like Killer Bee was killed and he was turned into the tree, right? So that's just a bit of an inconsistency there. I did like this line from Boruto over here, where just an interesting turn of phrase. Boruto read that one line over and over again, and over and over and over again. What, not even a Kage Bunshin, just a male? But Boruto was swelling up with laughter. This shitty dad. He was so happy, he almost couldn't stand it. He thought this was good enough. So again, you know, not trying to be mean or anything, but like, read that one line over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. This shitty dad. And then again, like the phrase shitty dad comes up again later. This shitty dad. It's just kind of funny. And then there's another one. Hang on, there's at least one more, right? Yeah, this shitty dad, his shitty dad. How is that, you shitty dad? It's not like it's breaking continuity or anything, but I just like the fact that they like quadrupled down on the shitty dad thing. So when Momoshiki and Kinshiki show up and they start fighting Naruto in the arena, I thought this phrase was kind of interesting. The young ogres were darker than the Red River Styx. This one holds the strongest and biggest chakra in this seed-hyphen plot. If we recover it, we should be able to plant the divine tree again. Okay, so they describe the earth itself as being a seed plot, right? So later on, we are also going to hear the term seed plot used in reference to Momoshiki's dimension or planet or place, but they also see the earth itself as a seed plot. So that kind of reinforces the idea that, like, if they're using the same term to describe these two things, they start, like, the first time we see them use this term, it's specifically in reference to a planet that has not been conquered and is clearly not something that Momoshiki created himself. There's no evidence that he created like the main Naruto universe or Naruto's planet or whatever. So the term seed plot is used to refer specifically to a place where the seeds are going to be planted later. And then I think I had to double check this, but I think this scene over here, so Kinshiki is like attacking. First of all, Kinshiki gets his horn broken by Sasuke, and he has this line which he doesn't have in the other versions of the story. Kinshiki then is in the middle of an attack when he gets frozen by Shikamaru's Kagemane, except it's not. So that's like different from how it is in the movie and the other versions, I think. Let's take a look at the movie. But just to start to, now we're going to start to see some major differences in the fight choreography and in the overall events that happen. And you could say, well, these are minor retcons, these are minor differences, but no, it changes the feats, it changes the way that the scenes play out, right? So at about 50 minutes and 45 seconds into the movie, Momoshiki is like walking along, he's about to attack somebody, and then he gets like Boruto fires some jutsu at him, Momoshiki absorbs it, and then I guess it does get both of them actually. So Momoshiki and Kinshiki both get hit by the Kagemane, so I was wrong about that. So that's fine. I think that's fine. Vengeance for my horn. Yep. Okay. So I just want to see. Yeah. Okay. So then, when they introduce themselves, also, right? When Momoshiki and Borishiki, no, Kinshiki, sorry. When fucking Momoshiki and Kinshiki introduce themselves to the group, they say, "We only want to start over what Otsutsuki Kaguya, who used to be in this seed plot, failed to carry out. That being retrieving the scattered chakra by gathering it into one fruit." So this is basically, and then they're, making the fucking medicinal pills. So what they're saying here, the term seed plot they're using is they're referring to the planet itself with all the people on it as a seed plot. And there used to be a divine tree on the planet, and the divine tree used to have all the chakra in it, and then that got split up into a bunch of different pieces, and one of those pieces is Killer Bee, and one of those pieces is Naruto. So they're going around and they're collecting them, and then they're bringing them to this other dimension, and then they're putting them in, they're either making a new tree out of them, or they're putting them in the tree in the other dimension so that they can make fruit out of them. They're draining the chakra out of the human beings so that they can put it back in the tree and recultivate the seed plot, right? And this term seed plot, again, is being used to refer to a planet. So just keep that in mind. And specifically the people on that planet that have chakra in them to be harvested later. Okay. So now we also have an interesting use of the term star. Apparently the term planet can also be used to mean star. So let's just Jisho star. Okay. Okay. So this word over here, I'm gonna play the audio. It might be loud.
Hoshi.
So Hoshi, assuming that this is the word that's being used, star, excluding the sun, usually planet or heavenly body, right? So Hoshi can be used to describe a star, but it can also be used to describe a planet. And so it seems like what's happening here is that, annoyance, that was one word. Fuck me, why is it so hard to read? That one word was what Momoshiki was feeling. He could see that the people of this star were practically using the chakra that Kaguya had left behind in their own way. If it had been the people of any other star, they would have been annihilated with his first blow. It didn't amuse him for these ones to cause him so much trouble. So basically, like, he's used to just going to random planets and to finding people there who offer no resistance. He refers to those planets as stars, or rather the original text uses a word that can be interpreted as stars. But basically, when Momoshiki is talking about people on a star, he's actually referring to the civilization on the planet that he's going to drain the chakra from. And usually he doesn't have this much trouble, but because Kaguya was here before and led to them getting chakra, they're giving them more resistance. So there's some context for how the term star is using. Momoshiki also, hasn't really been doing much thus far, but he's already about to run out of offensive jutsu. So that's, a sign of the limitations of his power. Amplified several times over to the point that it looked like a comet that foretold their ruin. That ominous light dominated everything. Really vivid, really cool description. I noticed that nobody, thankfully, thank fucking Kishimoto, that nobody actually looked at this and said, dominated everything. But here's the thing. I wouldn't put it past one of these, fucking upscaler folks to find a sentence like that and be like, okay, dominated everything, Momoshiki dominated everything, everything means the whole universe. Because that's the exact same shit that Noodles would do in his video with the Susanoo being able to see across the entire universe and all that bullshit, right? So this just suggests to me that, that they didn't actually read the novel. They just quote mined it from whatever source that they got these snippets from. Because if you are going to apply this same perspective to power scaling, where you just take every statement in the most literal way possible, then yeah, there are other things in here that you could use. But also, I hope we can all see that, especially since 3 other different fucking versions of the story exist, and we have them visually depicted in multiple different ways from different like artists, that we can see that we can take a statement from the novel, from the spin-off, and put it into context in those other three versions and see that like there is no ominous light that dominates everything. There's no universal light feat, and we should apply that same perspective to anything else. Right. Okay. So yeah, here's another thing, right, that you could potentially use. Here's Gaara, right? There wasn't even the slightest hesitation in Kazekage Gaara's words. On his back was a gourd. Stored inside it was sand that gave him an absolute defense, which he used to protect weaker people to the very end. He was an indestructible hero. Okay, so Gaara has infinitely scaling defense, guys. It's verbatim stated in a canon source. Gaara is indestructible. He cannot be destroyed. He's a hero, and he can't be killed. It's impossible. Boruto era Gaara can't be destroyed, and we know this because a source that is a verbatim canon source written by official authors, the same source that we're getting the statement from about, oh, I don't know, Momoshiki creating an entire universe that scales to our own, literally says it's indestructible. No, don't interpret it. Don't put it into context. Don't go check. Why would you need to check? You don't need to go check in other sources because it's written here, literally spelled out. Okay, obviously I'm being sarcastic, just to be very, very clear. Then Daru says, after all, if one of the 5 Kage is gone, the term will go out of use. Okay, good job. And then also this, his appearance looked a little like a flashy middle-aged man, but the truth was he was a man more nimble and daring than anyone else. Okay, sorry. So I know you maybe think that fucking, I don't know, Naruto and Sasuke are at the peak of the verse, but actually Darui is the most nimble and also the most daring person in the entire Naruto canon. Sorry. If you thought that other characters were more nimble or daring than him, we're just accepting words at face value right here. So Darui is more nimble than Sasuke. Sorry if you're a Sasuke fan, but Darui scales above him. Okay, because it's written. Let me take a break from whining and look at the chat real quick. Lightning Speed Panda, yeah. Who's the strongest panda in fiction? There has to be some mythological panda that is part of a myth tradition that has a feat of like, this is the panda that like made love to the sun and gave birth to galaxies, or so, you know, like so, something like that. So it was a bad example. How do you even? I don't even want to think about the logistics of that, but you know what I mean, right? There's probably like a celestial panda that gave birth to more celestial things. Dr. Strangle says star here more precisely means heavenly body, which ranges from 1 centimeter asteroid to the biggest star, as confirmed by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency website, or JAXA. That's actually extremely helpful. Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah, I think it's clearly a word that can have multiple definitions and doesn't specifically refer to like a burning mass of star, right? Saria says, my life is a fucking meme. You're locked in the house. Oh no, are you okay? What happened? Oh, I saw your comment. Panda from Tekken and nobody will convince you. Yeah, that's fair. That's what I should have just led with. I will leave the burden of proof for other people to disprove that. Geez, I hope you're okay. I hope you can actually get out if you need to. That's fucking scary if you're dealing with that. I'm sorry. Okay, so now we're nearing kind of the end of the little book report here. Okay, let's just go a little bit further. Now we start to get into the actual like Momoshiki fight component, right? So this is on page 78. Again, the easiest way to navigate the PDF is just to look for the specific strings. This is not said. Sorry, are you guys okay? What happened? Do you need to call for help? I hope you're not in any kind of danger. Take care of yourself there. So how did you get locked inside? What happened? It seems like you're in good spirits though, potentially. So I hope you're safe. It's very important that you're safe. Hopefully you have somebody to call. Yeah, let me know how things progress. I want to know that you're okay. So the easiest way to navigate the PDF, by the way, is probably just to search for strings. But of course, you know, the pages are at the top over here, so you can hopefully find them pretty easily. Okay. So this is something that Noodles has used, is something that Key uses as well. This is when Naruto first gets transported to the dimension and tied up on the tree, right? Naruto is inside darkness. He didn't think they'd gotten very far from the village of Konohagakure, but rather than saying this was some place he didn't remember, it would be more accurate to say that this was a parallel world. It was terribly cold and distortions rippled through the sky. It wasn't the airspace of his own world. And then he starts wondering about what might be happening and trying to figure it out. He says Kaguya had held the power of sending people into parallel worlds too. Is this something like a Kekai, or a subspace, right? So he's trying to figure out what's going on. And then he says about half of it looked like the secondhand knowledge he had of the games his son played, so he's likening it to a video game. But this place shouldn't be all that different from his own world, so it's similar, right? And then also, this is very important here, Naruto is described as being physically restrained and realized that he was bound to a pillar. Now, this novel is the only version of the story that describes Naruto as being restrained to a pillar. In the movie, Naruto is very clearly described as being bound to a tree, right? Depicted as being bound to a tree. You can see around the 1 hour and 12-minute mark, right? Here's the fucking tree. We also see that in the manga, obviously, and we saw it in the anime as well, but just to kind of show you, like, here's the tree. That tree never fucking comes up in the manga as far as I can tell. I don't think there's any mention whatsoever of him being attached to the tree. There's no mention of Killer Bee being turned into the tree or anything like that. It's a pretty big fucking detail to leave out, you know, the divine tree not being there. But for whatever reason, the novel doesn't mention it. Let me just double check that, because I'm now realizing how weird it is that it doesn't come up. Okay. 40 divine tree been cut down. That's the other one in the main area. No, so there's no mention of that tree. Absolutely none. So this whole scene happens, and over the course of this entire scene, no mention is made of the tree whatsoever. So there's this feat of, like, Kinshiki slicing down the tree. That doesn't show up. Naruto being bound to the tree, being freed from the tree. Let's see, how does Naruto get freed from the pillar, actually, by Boruto? So let's see. Skip to where Boruto shows up. Ends, let's see. Launch on its, okay. Naruto grinned from where he was restrained to the pillar. Momoshiki noticed his intent and raised his head up. He was already too late. The fabric of space tore open, and a nostalgic sight burst out. Sasuke with Mangekyo. On top of that, other figures burst through. Boruto. The young boy's figure flew and cut through the darkness. His golden hair fluttered and eyes blah, 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 blah. Let's go. Taking advantage of the sand. They used the sand as footholds. That's really cool. Kinshiki expanded his giant axe and counterattacked. Gaara's sand was stretching towards his feet. Okay. And so Boruto and Sasuke appeared in front of Naruto. Naruto soon figured out who was behind the side of his son dressed up. Okay. So Boruto skillfully cut away the chains that were restraining Naruto. The sight of him really did look like a lot like Naruto himself. So the way that this translation is describing what is happening here is that Naruto is chained to a pillar. Okay, and remember, this is a direct adaptation of the movie, and both this adaptation and the movie came before the manga and the anime. And let's see how he's depicted here. Okay, he's tied to a fucking tree. There's no chains. There's no chains here. He's tied to a tree. Okay, and now the characters come down and we see that. But then the way that Naruto gets out of it is specifically, yes, we have the sand coming down. I think they're used as footholds, but they're actually used more as attacks, not really used as footholds right now. And then what happens? I think Sasuke goes through. That might be Kurotsuchi, I don't remember, but they actually cut through the tree, not the chains, and they have Naruto falling over. And then Boruto comes down, and then he slices through the tree, and then Naruto falls, like, unconscious. Oh, there they do use him as footholds, okay. And then he's, like, falling down. He's either unconscious or at least he's, like, taken out of it. He's, like, a little groggy or something like that, right? So that's not what the novel is describing. The scene is quite different. Now, you can say maybe the translator made a translating quirk or something, and was just like, okay, so I'm going to translate the vines of the tree into chains, and that might be the case, and maybe we should give the translator more credit. But the point is, I'm not upset with the translator. I'm not responding to the translator. I'm responding to the motherfuckers who took the translator's work out of context. and they're perfectly happy to just take something like this out of context when it benefits them and to use it like this, right? And that goes for Sage and Noodles too, have done the same thing. But not to mention how there are other major fucking differences, or try to reconcile them or explain them in any sort of way. And this is just the first. We're going to talk about a whole bunch more in just a second. Saria says, okay, so our lock has our door has one lock, and the screens on the window do not come off. But if the lock is jammed, so my dad wanted to go out for a smoke, and you're fucked. Oh my god. Strangle says, did you try jiggling it? Look for a YouTube tutorial how to unjam a door, or wait for your dad is my best advice. Yeah, if you feel like you're in any kind of danger whatsoever, you should call somebody. That would be pretty scary for me. I'm sorry to hear that you're in that position. But yeah, when your dad comes back, maybe consider having a talk with him about coming up with a backup plan for this, because that sounds really unsafe. Like if there's a fire or something, that could be really dangerous. That's you want to have different escape methods, so to speak, if you need to. Please, stay in touch, and stay in touch with your dad and your mom as well. Make sure that you guys are looking after each other. I'll try to pay close attention to chat. And Strangle's idea is good too. Like maybe you might be able to just some doors, depending on what kind of door it is, like you can just unscrew the handle. You might be able to take it off if you wind up getting in a crisis situation. There's something to consider. Your dad is in the house. He's trying to get us. Okay. Well, at least he's there with you. At least you're all together. That definitely makes it better, I think. So that being said, let's see. So here, Naruto was physically restrained. He quickly realized he was bound to a pillar. Okay, so we do have this statement here. Just this one has been very spatial. He'll take some time. Just want to point out that phrasing is a little bit awkward. The young ogre named Momoshiki, again, we're using that term, but those words, just this one, let him guess that other Jinchuriki had been hunted down too. So this is a little bit of a, you could just say that just refers to Killer B, but if the novel is implying that Momoshiki and Kinshiki stopped and started going after all the other Biju or Jinchuriki, that's not something that's supported, or it's not something that's really referenced in the manga or the other versions of the story. But I think you could just excuse that as being referring to Killer B specifically. Okay, we got the fabric of space tearing up. Tojiro getting wounded. I checked, and that's depicted elsewhere. Yeah, so here's this as well, in case there's any confusion about the idea of what the pillar was, or whether it was just a synonym for tree, or like a creative interpretation of the term tree. On page 83, we have this. Sasuke didn't just stop Naruto. At the same time, he went around behind Momoshiki and ready to kunai. Momoshiki turned around in midair, intending to fell down Sasuke with one large sweep of his sword, but in Sasuke's place there was the chakra pillar that Naruto had been restrained to. Okay, so, he's actually using Amino Tejikara to swap out with the fucking pillar. I don't think Sasuke's swapping out an entire fucking tree. They'd probably mention that, right? So that's another significant issue there. Let's see. I also want to mention that we're going to take a look at how Kinshiki's sacrifice or absorption is depicted in the other versions of the story. We get more details. This is actually one of the things that I think that the novel does better, is that the novel goes into significant detail on how Kinshiki sees himself as giving himself up as a sacrifice, and he views the entire experience with a little bit more intimacy, a little bit more reverence, like he's passing along his legacy. Whereas, there's a little bit more coldness that's kind of involved in Momoshiki's actions later, right? Look, come now, Momoshiki sama, it's my duty as your parental role, etc. Some of this happens, the same basic things happen in the other versions of the story, but compare that to what happens in the movie as an example. I don't think their conversation kind of goes like that. I think it's very kind of rudimentary. Kinshiki is able to get out, but also here's something that's interesting that happens. Kinshiki breaks out, right, on his own. He just breaks out of the restraints, and then he goes and assaults everybody with this barrage of weapons. His skin is like exposed and his musculature is exposed. He's like actually kind of brutal, and he's like bleeding, and he's obviously like in a lot of pain. And then he actually manages to cut down the entire tree himself with a naginata. And keep that in mind, right? Kinshiki himself cuts down the tree with the naginata in this version of the story, whereas in the manga it's Momoshiki who cuts it down with this like radial blast here, and he only does it after he fuses, as opposed to Kinshiki doing it before the fusion on his own, right? So there's other major differences in the choreography of how this all goes down. But talking about like the sacrifice or the absorption, right? Like Momoshiki, like Kinshiki is obviously like more tired, more calm, more reverential, I guess you could say. He's a little bit more, he's like wavering, talking about his clan's legacy, and he's sort of confronting his mortality. It's much more somber in the movie, for what it's worth. And I think that the anime does a good job, or the novel does a good job of representing this. And then Momoshiki almost seems like grimly resolved to it. Compare that to how it goes down in the manga and in the anime. We'll just look at the manga for now. The anime is actually a pretty close adaptation, so of the manga specifically, but their conversation here is a little bit different, right? Kinshiki is kind of bound up, and while he is bound up, Momoshiki kind of observes everything, and then he himself decides, you know, he says he has this dialogue about interesting fate that doesn't show up in the manga or in the novel, but he basically just does this. Like, Kinshiki never breaks out. Kinshiki never rejoins Momoshiki. Kinshiki never has this speech. He never has like this moment with Momoshiki where he's like reverential or whatever. He just sneers, and Momoshiki just like grabs him and doesn't even give him a chance to say goodbye, and just like eats him, right? And I think that's the same way that it's depicted in the anime. I think maybe they have a little bit more dialogue, but that's pretty much it. So there's another major difference, right? The way that their relationship is depicted in the novel and in the movie is very different than the way that it's depicted here. Not to mention also that in the novel and in the movie, Momoshiki never does this shit where he looks at Boruto and activates the Byakugan and talks about his fate and then talks about passing down to the next generation. This does not happen in the novel and in the movie. So this is just like a brand new edition, right? Just trying to establish that there are major differences between these versions of the story. Let's see. This is interesting over here. We're almost done with this. On page 84, it says Momoshiki was cornered. He could say that he'd fought well against his opponents. However, the root of his power existed in absorbing the jutsu of others. Taijutsu wasn't something that could be externally released, but also wasn't something that could be sucked in. So, again, we're thinking of this person as like universal, except we have a specific depiction of the root of his power, like the core of his power, his serious power, whatever, however you're going to phrase it, as being derived from other people, right? Like the way that he does his most impressive shit, all of his like super giant, like the giant Rasengan, like the big barrage of different, like storm of different techniques he uses at the exams, he does all of that by absorbing other people's power. So even if he does have a universal feat somewhere, that universal feat is a combination of his ability to amplify shit with the input he's getting from other people. So it's not even correct to say that it's his feat. It's his feat through some arbitrary unknown infusion of external shit that he's absorbing and amplifying. And we don't know what that is or where it's coming from. So that's another major wrinkle and a major problem with this argument. Yeah, the Crimson Rasen. Exactly. Sorry, I said my mama really hit me with... Oh, I thought you said your mama hit you. I'm glad that wasn't the case. I really hit you with, isn't this what you go to school for? Yes, exactly. No, don't you know? Sorry, before you take any quantum physics course, you first have to take shop and know how to disassemble doors. I think that should be a requirement. Okay, there's also this kind of fun little line about Gaara. It's just a throwaway line. I just thought to include it for whatever reason. While Gaara may have had the absolute defense, he couldn't convert kinetic energy to zero. I don't have anything to say about it. I just thought it was kind of cool. Okay, so then there's a bunch of stuff with the fight choreography. You can read through this and compare it to the series if you want. I have a few notes here. But mostly the important thing was like talking about the Kinshiki sacrifice. And then I think that the next thing to go over is this, and then we're almost at the end. So on page 86, after he absorbs him, Naruto and Sasuke say, "You demon." And then, like, see, this is so important, right? What do you understand Momoshiki thought, but saying that out loud would only insult Kinshiki's resolution. So this little detail is something that I think is actually great. Like, I love it. But it's something that doesn't show up in the other forms. So really here we're getting more detail about almost like an amount of reverence and respect that Momoshiki has for the sacrifice of his like parental figure. Like his father, essentially adopted father maybe, like gave him his life to empower him, and Momoshiki respects and appreciates that in a way that is just not present in other versions of the story. There's none of that is kind of revealed here. It's in the movie, so the novel's adapting the movie correctly, but it's not carried forward into the subsequent, more current versions of the story. But let's read for a little bit. There was only one way to repay him: the transfer of power. That is our clan's law, Momoshiki said, and ate the Cinnabar Panacea pills, the red chakra pills that had been created from Kinshiki. The color of his flesh changed. Chakra spurted from all over his body. We don't really see that, but that's okay. From the very beginning, this star was to be the our Otsutsuki's seed plot. He yelled, "Come now, the time for all the chakra to be eaten has come." Okay, so this is really weird, right? Like, he's referring to the place that they are as a star, but he's saying that this star in particular was meant to be the Otsutsuki seed plot. And then over here, I think, where was it that there was that other statement about, like, this was, yeah, okay, this was a question of whether mankind who lived on this star would be able to greet tomorrow, establishing that the term star can refer to a planet or other celestial body. I think there's two ways to interpret this. One is that he's referring to the people who are currently on the planet, whatever fucking planet they're on, wherever that planet is. He's intending on draining all of their chakra right there. Or what he's saying is he's referring to the Earth in Naruto as being, the place that was intended to be drained. It's a little unclear to me. The translation here is a little bit clunky. And yeah, Dr. Strangle, I saw your message. I'm going to show your translation in a second as well. Let's just take a look at that, right? This thing over here. So this is Dr. Strangle's translation again. Thank you so much for providing this. Your translation read, "From the beginning, this planet had been our Otsutsuki seedbed." So this planet, now the time has come to devour all the chakras. So this could be referring to the new planet that they're on. I think that makes more sense than that they're talking about the other planet. Well, this could also refer to the Earth, right? They had been planning on having the Earth be the place that... Okay. Hang on. So here's another way of looking at this, right? So they come to find Killer Bee. When they come to find Killer Bee, he's on Earth. They find him and they drain his chakra. But then it's revealed that Killer Bee was turned into this giant tree, right? And no, I think that now I'm getting off track. What I was gonna say, I don't think we can reconcile this with certain other statements, but it's revealed that Killer Bee was turned into the tree in the anime, and so if that's the case, then maybe what's happening here is Momoshiki and Kinshiki came to Earth. They found Bee. They turned him into a tree, or like incorporated him into a tree, drained his chakra, and drained the chakra from that area. Then left that tree there, then flew to Konoha, took Naruto, and when they go through the portal, they're not actually going to another dimension. They're not going to a different universe or anything like that. They're just going back to where they were on Earth, where B is, and where that tree is now. And when they then say, this place, this planet, the seed plot was always intended to become our seed plot, what they're saying is we have been on Earth this whole time. We planted a tree over there. Now, Naruto, you're going to be part of the tree, and all of this is part of our plan to specifically drain the Earth. So they never actually leave Earth. Now, I think that's hard to reconcile with the idea that, like, when Naruto gets transported there and put on the pillar, he has this statement that it's like, this clearly isn't the airspace of his world. So that's the thing, right? Like, Naruto, if you translate that as, like, Naruto is like, I am definitely not in Kansas anymore. I am not on my planet. This is a different planet. This is a different world. Then, okay, we can't reconcile those two things. If, however, there's a way of looking at that statement as being more abstract or more metaphorical, then we could potentially... no, I'm talking myself out of it, because look at where Killer B is. He's by some water in these stone pillars. This doesn't really look like where they fight later. Nah, this is a different place. Okay, no, they just took him somewhere. Yeah, we don't see any of this shit. No, okay. Interesting idea, but I'm gonna reject that. I don't think that actually pans out, so we'll just move on for that. I don't, unfortunately, it would have been cool, but no, I think there's not enough evidence to support that, and there's too many contradictions, so you retract that. Sorry, it says, like, the 10 times Kamehameha. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I think it'd be supposed to be a planet because they share the same kanji. Yeah, that also makes sense as well. Heavenly body means everything but the planet Earth. Oh, but the planet Earth specifically. Okay, well then that's more evidence towards it being another place, just not Earth. The entire family has just given up on unlocking the door we call Anti-Man. Your niece and nephew find this as hilarious as I do, though. Honestly, so do I. Am I allowed to? It's pretty fucking funny. As long as you're not in distress, then I'm going to laugh a little bit, if that's okay. So anyway. Okay, so, let's resume here. Again, page 86. From the very beginning, the star was to be the our Otsutsuki seed plot. He yelled, "Come now. The time for all the chakra to be eaten has come." He was truly an ogre. Those who would eat the soul of somebody who'd been like a father couldn't be anything other than an ogre. That was their law. Again, I understand, I think, why this translation was made. I just want to point out that, like, it's convenient that none of this ever gets shown, right? Like, as far as I can recall, let me just check and make sure that that's true. Right, like, Key doesn't show it, Noodles doesn't show it. I don't think, what's his name, Sage shows it, although I'd have to go double check, because I think that if they showed this, people would be like, wait a minute, what the fuck are they talking about? Eating your father being like an ogre, right? Like, also leaves out the typo and stuff like that, also leaves out the use of the term seed plot. At the very least, we're just never getting the full context. Like, when people quote mine and, like, cherry pick shit like this, we are always getting context that's omitted, and we're always, like, getting denied the full picture. At the very least, I think that is very clear to see. But then we get this very strange way of describing what happens here. Momoshiki, who had passed from being an ogre into a comrade eating fiend and transformed into a inhumane demon, began to suck in the chakra from the surroundings. So again, I'm not trying to slag on the rag rather on the translator, but if we're going to use this as our source of truth, just keep in mind that, like, the phrasing is pretty inconsistent here, right? And then we get to this. He was even draining the chakra that was beyond the parallel dimension he'd made. Sasuke could clearly see the stream with his Rinnegan. So, what the... we've been over this before. I went over this on stream before, and Dr. Strangle and I talked about this before. We could not figure out... and I asked Hobbs about this as well. We could not figure out what the fuck the stream is that Sasuke supposedly could see. Because in the manga, there's no stream that appears. There's no stream that Sasuke sees with his Rinnegan. There's no stream that Sasuke sees here. And there's no stream in this version either, in the anime. Never anywhere is there a stream that's ever brought up or mentioned or described. I have no fucking clue what this is talking about. So maybe he made a parallel dimension, but as for, like, absorbing the chakra or whatever, I mean, let's see what Dr. Strangle said before. His translation was, extremely it starts to leak out from the outside of his constructed parallel world. Sasuke's Rinnegan reads the flow. The meaning there is no more than one, that guy can't be. Indeed, the chakra of the planet's surroundings will be indiscriminately consumed entirely. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's more like you're saying all of the chakra that was in the planet itself had been absorbed into the tree. So, Momoshiki. Okay, so this is making sense. So, what Momoshiki did is he found this planet, he planted a tree on the planet. The tree absorbed the chakra from the planet, so the tree had chakra in it. Then Momoshiki brought Naruto to this place and started draining his chakra as well, and he had chakra from some of the other Jinchuriki. And now it was time for Momoshiki to take all the chakra that had been drained, that was a part of that tree, that was in that space, and pull it all into himself, because it was starting to leak out of the seedbed. It was starting to like spill out from this place, not like spill out back into the main Naruto universe or whatever, not leak between dimensions or anything like that. It was starting to just like go all over the place because there was so much of it. And so Momoshiki then starts to gather it into himself and pull it into himself, and he's starting to absorb all the chakra that is available to him in this space after having drained it from multiple people, drained it from the life force of the planet himself. And Sasuke watches the flow of this happening, and that's what he's responding to. Let me see the DMs real quick. I have to go in like 10 minutes, though, so I gotta watch the clock. Thank you for sending this to me, by the way. Yeah, in the movie The Planet... Okay. In the movie The Planet they are on, that the most used mistranslation translates to star, is barren. But in the novel it says... Naruto says, this place shouldn't be all that different from his own world. Shouldn't be all that different from his own world. And later on from Naruto, while talking about Momoshiki, he plans to indiscriminately eat up all this planet's chakra. And from the narrator, this was a question of whether mankind who lives on the planet will be able to greet tomorrow. Meaning it seems to be the case that in the novel, the planet is not barren or not destroyed yet. And in the movie, the pillar Naruto is tied to is a god tree, implying that the barren world in the movie was not barren at some point. Adding to the certainty that they are talking about the same planet in the novel, uses for illustrations, frames to the movie. Yes, okay, makes sense. Momoshiki refers to the planet as a seedbed, the same thing he calls the Naruto planet, which is the constructed, built, or developed part of the Otsutsuki due to planets. We can see the mistranslates to star for the Naruto planet as well. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that you've, yeah, and then you have this, I'll have to rearrange the seedbed and make it beautiful. Anyway, that scan, or that frame from the movie, I believe, right? So yeah, this is great. I like the way that it ties this all together, and I'm feeling like I'm getting a more complete picture now that we're looking at this from multiple angles. So again, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna see if Hobbs had anything else to say. So I think this was Hobbs' comment, right? This is what he had to say. And this phrase here is the past tense of this thing, which I'll pretend to understand, which means assembling and building something, means a parallel reality, timeline, or alternate dimension. Which is sci-fi babble for parallel universe, timeline, or reality. So it's saying Momoshiki created the alternate reality they're currently in. I think it means to be continuously leaking or flowing outward. The kanji mean leaking and flowing out of. So I think it's saying that Momoshiki's chakra is actually leaking outside of the dimension he created, not that he's sucking chakra from somewhere else. Means planet in this context. So here's a bit of an alternate view, but more clarification on the actual kanji that are being used. So shout out to Hobbs again. Thank you for your time and for helping us to try to understand that a bit better. Really appreciate your hard work on that. And I remember you got that to me like really quickly as well. So I really appreciate that. So I hope that provides a little bit more context. Let's just finish this up real quick. Momoshiki be, yeah, I went over that stuff, passed from being a comrade eat an ogre into the other thing. So we also have this over here, giant crowbar of chakra. I don't think I ever remember seeing a giant crowbar of chakra. Let's see. There was a statement like this from the novel, right? Momoshiki fired an amplified version of the Kage Shibari, the shadow bind jutsu. It restrained the Kokage, okay, blah, blah, blah. The pitch black shadow covered everything. It was the darkness of despair. Again, there's nothing wrong with the author describing it this way, but of course, if you're going to be an asshole and like take things as hyper literally as possible for your like power scaling agenda, you know, you could absolutely take this as there's a, like, it says everything, right? So I can just hear like Noodle's fucking voice right now saying like, well, it covered the entire universe because everything means the entire universe. More evidence why we shouldn't just take things at face value like this. We should put it in context, because otherwise you get like dumb shit like that coming up. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So there's this thing also, which I want to double check and see if it's supported. So on page 91 we have this line: Momoshiki was getting up, an indignant expression on his face. He ate more cinnabar panacea, his skin now turning black as pitch night. So does that actually show up here? I don't think so. I don't think his skin ever turns black. I mean, like, he gets like a bit more muscular or whatnot. Like right around here is where he eats the, like, more of the fruit. Like, I think he's about to pop them out of his hand right now. Yeah, they come up there. So this is where he eats them, and he gets all buff, and he does like a little shockwave thing. I don't think he ever turns black. Let's just keep going. Yeah, so he's not black. So that's another thing that the novel just changed. Never turns black. And I think that's basically it. This was kind of funny. This is just stupid, but you know, Rasengan was full of everything that made up his father. So, like, again, obviously this is metaphorically speaking about like Naruto's passion, his resolve, his courage, his determination, all of the experience and the training and everything he went through in his life combined into the Rasengan. But again, like, this is why you don't want to take this stuff hyper literally. And then this is the last thing I want to go over for now. Okay. This page over here, which I can post in the Discord, just check it out. We have to read through the whole thing, but like, this points out a whole bunch of other differences between the novel and the movie. So feel free to go over this. You don't have to take it all at face value, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of comes up here that is worth talking about. And then of course people challenge it in the comment section, so feel free to kind of go back and forth with it. What is the point of the past hour of me or more of me sharing all this? Well, it's that, like, again, the only bit of information that we have from Momoshiki supposedly creating a universe is the idea that in this translation of this novel, there is a phrase that mentions that he created a parallel dimension, and then we're just assuming that dimension scales to the entire universe. But we shouldn't just be taking this at face value anyway, because there's so many differences between the way that things are depicted in this version of the story and the other three versions. If we really actually want to build a complete picture of how this all gets put together, then it behooves us to actually look at all the different versions of the story. And that's, I kind of ran out of time, but something I could do next time is talk about all of the differences between the three, because or the four, excuse me. I've read the novel multiple times, and I've read the manga multiple times, and I've seen both of the animated versions multiple times, and there's a lot of other differences. There's a lot of differences in choreography. There's a lot of differences in feats. There's differences in dialogue. There's differences in personality. There's entire sequences that just, like, do not fucking happen at all. Like, for example, and it's actually really cool, but one second, let me move this out of the way. In the anime, for example, there's this elaborate sequence with fused Momoshiki who engages in, like, this shit with Naruto and Sasuke, where they're, like, swapping out with they actually do have chains used here, but the sequence is different, right? Whereas it, like, this whole fight choreography here is completely different to what's in the other forms, like all three other forms. The weapons that Momoshiki uses, the person who cuts down the tree, and when the tree gets cut down changes like 5 different times. Like, sometimes Kinshiki gets hit with Chidori, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes Momoshiki, like, pulls Kinshiki out, sometimes Kinshiki breaks out. The times at which he uses the Inu Takeru, whatever this wood dragon thing is, changes. Sasuke uses a Chibaku fucking Tensei in the anime. He never does that in the manga. He never does that in the other two versions of the story. There's a lot that's different, If you really want to be a worm about it and be like, well, it's just a minor difference, it's just a minor retcon. Using a fucking Chibaku Tensei mid fight is not a minor retcon. It's a completely different feat. Like all of this, you know, choreography of the fight. Naruto never uses a Rasen Shuriken, that I recall in any of the other 3 versions. Right? It's actually not a Rasen Shuriken. It's a swap out with Sasuke. Sasuke gets wrapped up in these chains, but then he like manages to use Amino Tejikara to swap Momoshiki into the chains. Like that shit doesn't happen in the other versions. The fight choreography in the anime is probably the best. Like it's really cool. They do all kinds of crazy shit. And maybe like there's parts of it that are in the other versions, but it is different. They are different versions of the story. And these are the more current and more representative ones because they're actually featuring the actual current canon design of Momoshiki. So again, people have to work really, really, really fucking hard to find the one line from the one source and then just take it totally out of context to try to get Naruto to this level, as opposed to actually finding Naruto at this level. And that's what I object to here, right? So I'm going to have to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. I can't stay for as long as previously. But I will spend more time going over some videos next time. But let me end by looking at Sage's video for a sec. And then I'll say bye to folks in chat. So let's look at this video here.
Is Naruto Uzumaki universal? Let's talk about it. Most people who assert that Naruto is universal typically say that he has to be universal because Momoshiki is. So,
I don't know about that, but whatever.
Before we explore whether Naruto is, we have to identify whether or not Momoshiki is.
Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, that's a very oversimplified version, but that's fine. It's a, like, 1 minute video.
The short answer is probably.
Absolutely fucking not is the direct answer, but let's hear this guy out.
We know for a fact in multiple media.
Okay, so here
that he was able to create a parallel universe.
Okay, so what Sage says here is, we know for a fact in multiple mediums that Momoshiki was able to create a parallel universe. Okay, so this translation of whatever this is, it does say parallel universe, but notice that Sage doesn't actually provide a source for what this is. I have no idea where this comes from or why should we believe it. Why we should believe it. It doesn't establish the credibility of it and doesn't credit the translator as usual or demonstrate why this particular translation is valuable. This seems to be like a chapter summary or maybe like a movie summary or something like that. Who the fuck knows? Or maybe it's like an anime episode summary, but it's not actually provided. So there's no inherent reason to trust this or to think that we should just take this at face value.
Not an alternate dimension like Kaguya.
Apparently, Kaguya is creating alternate dimensions, but Momoshiki isn't.
A parallel universe.
Okay, so now we have, this is interesting, right? He was even draining the chakra from beyond the parallel universe he'd constructed. So conveniently, he's now using an alternate version of this particular translation that uses the term universe, even though the actual translation was not using the term universe, right? So if I look here for this phrase, there will be destruction. This was a question of whether mankind who lived on the star would be able to create tomorrow, indiscriminately up star's chakra, blah, blah, blah. Parallel dimension he's made. So same thing that Noodles did, might even be the same source of translation, I don't know, but look at the translation here. He was even draining the chakra from beyond the parallel universe he constructed. Okay, scanning the stream only mean one thing, don't tell me he's blah 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 blah, right? So where did he get this from? Who did this translation? If it's this translation, like, it seems very, very similar to this one, but conveniently dimension is changed to universe for some unknown reason with no explanation. Okay, let's keep going.
You can look at the kanji yourself, but
I can look at the kanji myself. Yeah, I can see that, but if you're not a native speaker or you don't have access to a translator, which your casual audience member might not, that's not going to help them, especially since, okay, at least you provided the page number. That is helpful.
Isekai means parallel universe.
Okay, isekai doesn't necessarily mean parallel universe. It can mean parallel universe, but the term isekai doesn't necessarily mean a parallel universe that scales perfectly to ours.
Kekai is actually what's used for alternate dimensions or...
Kekai, let's see. Kekai, boundaries for religious practices, prohibition, fence between inner or outer sanctums in a temple, short 2- or 3-fold lattice around the front desk of a store, barrier, dimensional barrier, containment zone, containment barrier, mystical barrier. So what are you saying?
Barrier dimension. So
Barrier dimensions. The phrase barrier dimension didn't really come up there, did it? Right? There were like 10 different definitions that were provided on that list, and he only like picked part of one that happens to benefit his perspective and didn't really put it into context of the other things.
because the wording
And
is
now
different,
we get this shitty fucking thing. This is the same one that Noodles used, I believe, except interestingly, this is using the stupid like iPhone notes app format that Noodles used in his video, except I'm pretty sure that Noodles' translation actually used the term universe, but now Sage is using a translation that actually uses the term dimension, because now he can refer to this thing with it being a star, right?
safely assume that he did in fact create a parallel universe.
Okay, so again, no credit whatsoever to where that came from. No credit for that translator either.
And since he casually eats stars, and we
Casually eats stars is the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time. This motherfucker doesn't eat stars. You're out of your mind. He doesn't eat stars. He drains chakra from planets and eats fruit. For fuck's sake.
we see him with like dozens of god trees around him in his
Yet we see...
universe.
Okay, no. This scene here, again, which he doesn't cite the source from, he doesn't demonstrate where this comes from or where people can find this to verify that. He arbitrarily calls this his universe without ever providing any kind of justification for that whatsoever, right? And then, okay, great. Where the fuck is this from? Where is this translation done? No idea. It's just kind of flashed on screen and we're just supposed to swallow it, right? What Momoshiki actually did here is he planted these god trees, sure, and he drained this planet or whatever this place is, sure. That doesn't mean this is in his universe and that universe is equivalent to our universe for any sort of power scaling purposes.
I think it's safe to say this is pretty consistent.
It's not fucking consistent at all.
But what does that mean for Naruto? Well,
Okay, I'm just gonna... Well, let's finish the video. We're almost
creation
done.
and destruction are two different things.
Yes,
meaning
that's
just
true.
because he has the chakra output to create a universe doesn't mean he can actually hit as hard as it would take to destroy one.
Well, he doesn't have that chakra output anyway, but sure.
So does Momoshiki or Naruto have universal attack potency? I would argue probably not.
Well, again, like, you haven't actually... On the other hand, not that I really want to support this position, but he also doesn't actually go through the process of evaluating any of their attack feats, like, in combat, in context, to see whether or not they are actually using that amount of energy. He just says, well, probably not. Okay, so this is a perfect example of the problems. You know, I wanted to show this because it doesn't matter if it's long form or short form. It doesn't matter if it's from years ago or if it's from current. It doesn't matter if it's from a pretty, like, apparently decent human being that I might actually get along with, or somebody who's, like, much, slightly haven't had as good interactions with. Let's just leave it at that. At the end of the day, when somebody wants to try to get Naruto to some level as opposed to meeting Naruto where he is, this is what they do. This is the tactic that winds up getting used. These are the mistakes that are being made. This is the misinformation that is being spread. This is the recipe for if you want to worm around through these arguments. Find individual statements that were translated by other people. Don't credit them. Don't provide sources that let people easily go figure that shit out yourself. Cherry pick definitions and, take images out of context, collate them or collage them together, and just say, we know this for a fact. Maybe sprinkle in some, I can clear this point via likelihood here or there, or it's likely to be, or mention a maxim or some shit like that, and then you're good. You're good. You don't actually have to go through. You don't have to read the whole novel. Why would you read the whole fucking book? It's almost 100 pages long. Nobody has time for that. To paraphrase what they said in the walkie-talkie debate, why would you go through the entire data book and look at all the different statements for all the different jutsu? Who has time for that? We have to use one data point. We literally have to. We are obligated to use one data point because the only other option is for us to read the whole data book. I'm sorry, but we just can't do it. So, hope you've learned something tonight, other than that I'm a salty bitch who can't let go, aka Akamaru in the flesh. This is me, and this is Universal Naruto, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Acolyte and Hobbs and Anime Drip. for the help on the translations previously, and anybody else who I might be missing out on. I really, I didn't do any of this on my own. Like, you guys helped, you guys were a part of it, and I learned a lot from other people. Shout out to end on a positive note. You can learn stuff from Sage. And I'm not just saying that in like a backhanded compliment way. Like, channel branding is on point, so go and learn from that. You can learn things from Key. Obviously, I really kind of despise the way that he approaches argumentation and conversation with other people, but at least he's reaching into sources and arguments that other people haven't heard of before, and is keeping the conversation going. That counts for something. So you heard me get upset, but also keep in mind that even people you disagree with and that you dislike their behavior or whatever, you can still learn something, and you can still try to make a positive thing out of it. And I encourage you to do that too. If you're listening to this and you think I'm full of shit, you think everything I said was dumb, great. Turn that into something productive. Send me a message, make your own video, make a response, make a debunking John the Maven, do whatever you got to do, get that energy out and make something, right? And contribute to the conversation, because this is not an ultimatum. This is not a, written in stone anything. This is a continuation of the conversation, and it's up to you listening to this, whoever you are, whatever your opinions are. It's up to you to figure out how you want to keep that going if you want to. So that being said, I am going to go take a shower and calm down, and then I'll be back next week, because you still have some stuff to get through. We've gone through all the major arguments now. We've gone through all the major points. All we got to do is just do a quick response and wrap up. I'm going to probably show a little bit of a video by Six, a little bit of a video by, talk about some more of the stuff in Key's video, talk about something from TG, and basically just do a round robin Q&A type shit, and we can go over anything that's lingering. I think that's it. Acolyte says the chakra is leaking out of the planet like twisting a wet rag and being absorbed. Yeah, oh, I fucking love that. Yeah, because the imagery of that really, really helps. I'm going to screenshot that, because that is a really, really good visual metaphor for that. Thank you so much for that. I really like that. And then chapter 689 Naruto, a similar thing with this chakra coming out of the planet under the ETSO. Yes, that makes perfect sense as well. This short is like when the essay has a work. Yeah, exactly. It does feel like that. No offense, but I felt that way about the, geography video as well. I think Sage is wrong when it comes to the barrier space stuff. Yeah, I'd agree with that. That could just be, well, I mean, look, barrier spaces, we talked about that very extensively in the whole, frog stream, but barrier spaces are real. Barrier spaces are things that are very well discussed and described in Naruto. I got no problem with, actually, I have no problem with the idea that since Kaguya creates spaces, if we agree that Kaguya can create a space, then it is possibly the case that other Otsutsuki can do it. I don't know if she's necessarily the only one who can do it. Yeah, then other Otsutsuki who might even be higher up the ladder than she could potentially do it too. And then, they make their own barrier spaces, they make their own planets, they make their own little dimensions, little universes. That's fine. I only really start to have a problem with it when power scalers start talking about it. Certain power scalers with certain agendas. I actually don't mind the idea at all, literally at all, of Momoshiki making a little solar system for himself and a little planet and hanging out on it. I only get upset when then people try to bullshit that all the way into power scaling versus battles wiki universal AP, because that's just ludicrous. I can clear this point in a debate. Yeah, but is it true? Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of I've been trying to engage people like Sage in a debate, in a productive conversation about some of this stuff. But once you start noticing that, people will kind of reveal that their motivation is not to actually get to a resolution and not to actually achieve some sort of consensus or whatever, or try to resolve a difference. It's just, I am here to win a point. And if I can feel like I can win a point, then that's all that matters. And at that point, that's when you say, okay, I'm going to do something else with my day, because this isn't going anywhere. I've learned that lesson the hard way. This could just be John Otsutsuki's universe with 100 Godries in it. Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably just a big ass planet that they that had a lot of abundant life on it that they just drained, and they decided to use multiple seedlings in order to do it. It seems reasonable to me. Yeah, I got that. I got that dog in him, and that's right. Part 1 of debunking Universal Naruto'nt, episode 1. Part 1 is 12. That's what I want to see. I want to see that back and forth. I want somebody to come back at me, with that like massive debunk, because then we can have like not an argument, a productive conversation about it. I want the peer review. Like, as much as it feels like strokes my ego for people to say like, wow, everything you said is great and perfect, I would much prefer people come at me with some like please be encouraging, but also I like constructive criticism because I want to learn and get better at stuff. So genuinely valuable if you can provide some of that. And then Strangle says, I think the way Sage describes barrier spaces is wrong, not that they don't exist. Okay, cool. Yeah, I have to kind of go back over the way that he said things and make sure that I'm like understanding it correctly. But anyway, I'm over time. Thank you so much for your time tonight, guys. I will see you on Thursday for more Clair Obscure, and then next Sunday for the actual conclusion of the series. Take care. Sorry, be safe. Send me a message or like send us a message on Discord and let us know that you got out of your house okay. I hope that you're safe. Okay, bye-bye.